Chapter 680. You wouldn't die if you didn't court death. This saying wasn't false at all. Some people were born to live, but others were born to court death. This lip-syncing live streamer Singers Institute had a previous record of stealing songs. This time he was up to his old tricks to deceive the audience once again, and his behavior was truly outrageous. Even so, there was still a group of audience members who had been fooled into giving him gifts to support him. This incident reminded Father Wang of a skit called Selling Crutches. It turned out that there really were people in this world who would pay the other person back after being cheated. They had been duped by this bad live streamer in a flash. Actually, it wasn't that Father Wang couldn't understand the behavior of these fans. It was very clear that most of these fans who desperately supported their idols might also be diehard in reality, and were unwilling to admit that they had followed the wrong idol. In most cases, it was their idols who ultimately paid the price for their fans' actions. Especially when the idols were unwilling to admit that they were wrong, the effect of protecting them to the death was even more frightening. Relying on lip-syncing the song, The Starry Sky's Language of Love, in the live stream room, this live streamer had gained a large number of fans. Father Wang had yet to officially announce this song to the public. Although it had already been uploaded on the music platform, the music video was in fact still in the production stage, and it was still pending release on the platform. Furthermore, Father Wang had only released an audio recording in his fan group. But Father Wang hadn't expected that this audio recording would actually be stolen by this intentional live streamer. This was the most unlucky thing about this live streamer. This song-stealing live streamer, Singers Institute, probably couldn't have imagined that this online song, which couldn't be found online, was written by a guru in the author circle for his wife. And now, this live streamer was about to be bombarded by Father Wang's attack on Pinggan City to save his wife Xiuqin. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Wolfang live streaming platform's live streamer Singers Institute was about to start a live stream. Wolfang live streaming platform was a live streaming platform that was about to go public. Not only did it have a large fan base, it also had a lot of daily users. Of course, it was still a level lower than Daoist Guang's Cultivation live streaming network, which was recognized as the #1 live streaming platform on the internet. However, most of the live broadcasts of the Cultivation live broadcasting network are outdoor and game programs. Programs like singing are not popular on such a live broadcasting network. In contrast, the entertainment industry of the Wolfang live broadcasting platform is much more developed. Each platform had its own unique characteristics. This was also a way for the platforms to compete with each other. When Father Wang was stuck, he liked to watch live streams for inspiration. That funny female live streamer Little Xian from before was on the Cultivation live streaming network. Although Father Wang had his own big shot account, on almost all the live streaming platforms he spent the most time and gave the most gifts on the Cultivation live streaming network. The battlefield this time was on Wolfang live streaming platform. To be honest, Father Wang really didn't know what to do at first. After all, the enemy's battlefield was different. But now, the collective brainpower of the fans gave Father Wang a lot of confidence. When he went on the air that night, the anchor wore a half mask as usual, covering the upper half of his face. Visually, he looked a little more mysterious, and it also covered his sunken nose bridge and his big nose, which was like a garlic clove. Yang Zhong stood in front of the mirror and put on his mask. He looked at himself in the mirror through the mask. His entire person seemed to be different. Even his spirit was different. He immediately straightened his back and became radiant with energy. It was as if this mask could completely bury his hypocrisy, vanity, and rotten spirit, and achieve the suggestive effect of brainwashing. No one knew what kind of person this half-masked little brother who looked pretty good was, and no one knew what kind of ugly appearance he had under the mask. Before the official live broadcast, Yang Zhong used his Singers Institute live streamer account to investigate the data in the background. Because he had lip-synced The Starry Sky's Language of Love to the camera the day before, he hadn't expected that when he opened the data in the background today, his overall data would soar. His fans had increased by 30,000. His subscriptions had increased by 100,000. The most important thing was the gifts he had received in the live stream room. His earnings from lip-syncing this song were actually more than his total earnings in a month. It had only been a few days. Yang Zhong stared at the data in the background and could not help but feel excited. He had not gone to the computer today, and this data made Yang Zhong very happy. Just as he was about to start the live broadcast, Yang Zhong received a call from his guild. It was a call from Lang Bei, the president of his guild, Shadow Fool. Yang Zhong picked up the phone and President Lang Bei smiled from ear to ear. "Little Yang, you did well. You actually earned 300,000 the day before yesterday. More than you earned in a month in the past. Ha 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 ha. Yang Zhong laughed. I found this audio by accident. It's quite similar to the voice of the substitute singer I found before. The name of this audio file is The Starry Skies Language of Love, but I searched it online and didn't find this song. It was probably accidentally leaked by some singer. That's great. Since it hasn't been released on the platform, let's release this song and say that it's ours. Sure. Anyway, no one has released it now. Even if it's brought up in the end, we have the advantage in time. We have the initiative now. If we find an album company to release it first, no one will be able to sue us. Yang Zhong laughed sinisterly in his heart. In this era of the fan economy, it was really too easy to earn money from fans, which made him feel incomparably happy. He had earned a lot in the last 2 days, and Yang Zhong had a very strong feeling that he was going to be popular. In all his years of live broadcasting, he had never had such a strong premonition. After the call, Yang Zhong sat back in his seat, turned on the camera, and turned on the beautifying function to the maximum. He then adjusted the angle of his crazy mic to cover his Adam's apple. Because the throat hardly moved when lip-syncing, it would be very easy for people to notice if his entire neck was exposed. I wonder how much money I can make today? Yang Zhong smiled and clicked the Start Live Broadcast button. As he had expected, the number of people in the live broadcast room began to soar. Then he glanced at the bullet screen. Netizen Captain of Wang Situ's detonation team, light incense. Netizen Platoon Leader of Wang Situ's detonation team, light incense, light incense. The live streamer is dead. Netizen Company Commander of Wang Situ's detonation team, incense warning. Netizen Company Commander of Wang Situ's detonation team, pour a bottle of sweet potato wine to comfort the soul of the deceased live streamer in heaven. Chapter 681. What was going on? Yang Zhong hadn't expected to be attacked by a water army as soon as he went live today. The question was, where had this water army come from? Could it be that a guild war had started again? Guild wars were very common in the live streamer circle, especially in the entertainment industry of live streaming platforms. In order to consolidate their power, various guilds had signed a lot of singers in the channel to form a team. It was also common for singers from different teams to arm wrestle with each other behind the scenes. Shadow Fool Guild had a lot of hostile guilds in Wolf Fang's live streaming circle, so Yang Zhong guessed that it was most likely the other guilds who had become envious after seeing the profits from his live streaming yesterday and had hired a water army to attack him. Wang Situ? Who was Wang Situ? Was there such a singer? He had never even heard of him. Just as Yang Zhong was feeling very puzzled, President Lang Bei sent a message in the chat group. Because the numbers in the live stream room had grown too abnormally today, the number of people who had been watching the live stream room before the live stream had already exceeded tens of thousands. If it was a hired water army, there would usually only be a few hundred of them, and only 100 or so people would repeatedly leave negative comments on the bullet screen. It would be over if they were all banned. But now, tens of thousands of people were besieging the live stream room. Only Commander Li Yunlong had seen this kind of situation when he had attacked Pinggan District, so the question was, who on earth was this Wang Situ? In the chat group, Lang Bei asked anxiously, what's going on? Who is this Wang Situ? Under his mask, Yang Zhong frowned and a drop of cold sweat rolled down his cheek as he quickly replied, I just looked at the bullet screen and guessed that it might be a fan of the original owner of the audio who came to our live stream room to blow it up. Hearing this, Lang Bei was startled. Such a coincidence? They had only mentioned the audio before the live stream, and after hanging up the phone, President Lang Bei had already arranged for a company that specialized in releasing music to release the song online for a limited time. Seeing that the number of people in the live stream room was going to exceed 500,000 in the 5 minutes he had been streaming, Yang Zhong suddenly panicked. What do we do now? He was just a small live streamer who couldn't sing, so he had to buy other people's dry voices to lip-sync his fans. Yang Zhong had thought about the day when he would be exposed, but he hadn't expected it to come so soon. Therefore Yang Zhong felt a little overwhelmed in the face of such a huge commotion. Calm down the fans in the live streaming room. Ban them when they need to. I'll arrange for someone to upload the song as soon as possible. Since this song has never been released on the internet, we'll be in the right if we release it first. President Lang Bei was thinking of a solution. Didn't we have a singer helping us before? Contact him and ask him to sing this song without any accompaniment. Record his voice. You can lip-sync it in the live broadcast room. Remember to act like it. Don't get caught. Yang Zhong nodded. Okay. The conversation with President Lang Bei was interrupted. Zhong Lang contacted the singer who had lip-synced for him. He had been so flustered that he had almost forgotten that he still had this trump card up his sleeve. And this singer was none other than Tang Yuning, the popular singer who sang Old Boys a while ago. The vagrant singer whom he had helped in Boss Tan's late-night dining hall. "Brother Tang? I have a song here, can you sing it for me?" Yang Zhong sent a message to Tang Yuning. On the other side, Tang Yuning fell silent after receiving another message from Yang Zhong. After a long while, he typed out 2 words, "Again?" Yang Zhong thought for a bit before replying, "Brother Tang, this really is the last time. I won't sing anymore, I'm going to become a talk show live streamer. You know my family's circumstances. My dad is bedridden, and my mom passed away not long after I was born. I have a younger brother at home and I need to pay for his schooling. We've known each other for a while, can't you help me one last time?" Tang Yuning was silent. "But after you were exposed, you swore to the audience and your fans that you wouldn't steal any more songs and lip-sync. Was all that fake? Brother Tang? Your voice is really similar to the voice of the singer of the audio I found recently. As long as we don't say anything, no one will know. This really is the last time." Yang Zhong knew that this was a serious matter. If Tang Yuning didn't help him this time, his acting career would be over. Apologize? There was no way he would apologize. In the previous incident, he had already apologized once. Yang Zhong clearly remembered that he had told the audience that in the future, the works he would perform in the live broadcast would all be his own works. He would no longer borrow the music of other artists and would no longer disappoint those who liked him. He was not a hypocrite. If something happened today and he couldn't withstand the pressure to apologize, then his future would be ruined. Although he had already looked for Tang Yuning and told him that he wouldn't bother him anymore, Yang Zhong really felt that he had reached a dead end. "Brother Tang, you have to help me with this matter." Yang Zhong made another request. "I know you're on the rise now, but before, Brother Tang, you have to remember that when you were a street singer, I specially supported you. And before that, I also left some screenshots of our transactions." Tang Yuning smiled. "Are you threatening me?" Yang Zhong, "No, I'm not threatening. I'm begging." Tang Yuning gritted his teeth. "I chose to help you back then because I knew your family was in trouble and I didn't have any money. If I really wanted your money, I would have directly split the profits with you for the live stream, instead of selling you 50 HNY for a capella." Tang Yuning was truly furious. He hadn't expected Yang Zhong to threaten him like this. Relying on his own voice, Yang Zhong had become popular online, gained popularity and fans. Now, Yang Zhong actually didn't hesitate to use their previous transaction records to threaten him and help him deceive the audience. How could there be such a person in the world? Tang Yuning was so angry that he directly closed the chat window and hung up on his phone. He had a lot of benefactors but not Yang Zhong. For Tang Yuning, his benefactors were late-night dining hall's owner, Boss Tan, and the youngster who had sold him a song at a low price back then and his father. But now, Tang Yuning himself was in deep trouble because of Yang Zhong. The moment he was threatened by Yang Zhong, Tang Yuning realized that things couldn't go on like this. Chapter 682. Tang Yuning had already endured this for a long time. He had always indulged Yang Zhong, but in the end, the other party had turned into an ingrate who would only reach out to him out of habit. This was something that Tang Yuning could never accept or forgive. Tang Yuning had heard many stories about the farmer and the snake, but he had never thought that one day it would actually happen to him. Yang Zhong had almost driven him crazy in the last few months. This wasn't the first time Yang Zhong had humbly begged him, but it was the first time he had used blackmail to ask him to help him deceive an audience. Tang Yuning felt that he had been too muddle-headed to actually help this kind of person. Tang Yuning got up from his computer and looked at himself in the mirror. Fatigue was written all over his face, and he had a scraggly beard and messy hair. He was already completely different from the street-wandering singer Tang Yuning who had relied purely on his work to survive. This wasn't the look Tang Yuning wanted. This was the look of the kind of person he had once hated the most. After the song Old Boys became popular, Tang Yuning had been constantly tormented and struggling in his heart because of Yang Zhong, and hadn't gone out for a very long time. But just now, Tang Yuning already had an answer. He used a small razor to shave his beard clean, and shaved his hair, leaving a clean buzz cut. Then he took out his phone and dialed his agent's number. "Brother Tian? I think I understand." Hearing the voice, the agent was blank for a moment before he heaved a long sigh of relief. "It's good that you understand. I've decided to expose him." "All right. That's for the best." This Brother Tian nodded. I've long found that Singers Institute an eyesore. They sing every day with half an S&M mask on, it's like they're giving a philosophy concert. Tang Yuning. Elsewhere in Father Wang's fan group, fans were complaining about the front-line battlefield one after another. A lot of fans were furious when they heard that Father Wang's, the Starry Skies language of love, had been stolen, and they formed groups to blow things up one after another. A lot of people had registered several accounts, but they hadn't started cursing. They had only asked if the live streamer had stolen the song, and had been directly banned by the moderator for 7 days. Now the fan group was full of complaints. Some of the enemy fans were really too scary, and they were too protective of their owner. As the saying went, what kind of person would have what kind of fans? Father Wang had done a search on this live streamer before. After being exposed for lip-syncing last year, he initially denied it in all sorts of ways. In the end, he couldn't withstand the pressure of public opinion and was forced to apologize to the public. For those who had experienced this before, the skin of Singers Institute was probably thicker than the city walls. Simply going to their live stream to question them would not give them any advantage at all. Father Wang opened Singers Institute's live stream room. When he had watched it yesterday, the number of people online had still been around 30,000. In the end, after he announced this matter in his fan group, the number of people in this guy's live stream room was now almost breaking 600,000. Hee, the fighting power of my fans is still quite strong. Father Wang was delighted in his heart as he casually scrolled through the bullet messages in the live stream room. A few fans with the nameplates of Dean defended him one after another. How could our Dean lip sync? Otherwise, how could he explain his previous a cappella singing? Was it lip syncing as well? Don't mislead the new audience. Father Wang, so what if you lip sync? I like the Dean because I like to see him flirt with girls, but I don't like to listen to him sing. What does lip syncing and stealing songs have to do with me? I'm not listening, tortoise chanting scriptures. Father Wang, why are there so many water armies today? With all due respect, what on earth is this Wang Situ? I've never heard of this singer before. Is he here to leech off our Dean's popularity? The corners of Father Wang's mouth were already twitching uncontrollably. This was really going too far. He was the Grand Cultivation Chinese network's top guru. Did he need to leech off a small singer's popularity? But what left Father Wang even more speechless was yet to come. At that moment, the administrator typed in the public screen, Dean's throat isn't feeling well today, so he won't be singing in the live stream today. He'll take a short break and chat with everyone. If you have any songs you want to listen to, you can leave a message on the public screen first. I'll record them down and Dean will sing them to compensate everyone later in the live stream. It was very obvious that this was a delaying tactic. Because there were too many people in the live stream room now, the other party was worried that he would give himself away while singing in front of so many people. If they caught any loopholes in this thing, there would definitely be no way to explain himself. Thus, Father Wang concluded that the other party definitely wanted to use this method to gloss over today's live stream, and then take his time to think about it after the live stream. And the most frightening thing was that these fans in the live stream room actually believed him. Sob, great Dean, rest well, I love listening to you sing the most. If your throat isn't good, don't sing, we all understand. Heavens. Great Dean's throat was kissed by an angel. He'll definitely be fine. Drink more hot water. Looking at these bullet messages, Father Wang was so angry he almost spat out blood. There were really too many fans who had been deceived. Even if his song hadn't been stolen, Father Wang felt that he had to take this matter seriously. He couldn't let this kind of person continue to get away with it. Father Wang said in the fan group, can anyone find out the real identity of this live streamer? Just his name and phone number will do. I'll give you 10 minutes in exchange. Less than 10 seconds after he said that, a fan called Eggy Saro in the fan group immediately replied, Yang Zhong, male, 176 centimeters tall, phone number 1391888XXXXX, address, Lane 872 Yunmen West Road, Songhai City. Bloody hell, Brother Egg, you found someone just like that? A lot of the fans cried out in surprise. It wasn't until that moment that Father Wang realized that there really was a hidden big shot in his fan group. How much time had passed, and he had even found out the address. Just as the rest of the fans were sighing over this Brother Egg-is battle, Brother Egg also replied very modestly, this is all I can do to help. I actually have an ID card, but this isn't very good. Everyone, don't call this number to harass him, let our big brother communicate with this live streamer first. Okay. No problem. For a moment, a lot of people in the fan group responded. At that moment, someone asked a question. But Brother Egg, how did you find out all this? Do you have resources? Of course I have to keep this a secret. This Brother Egg smiled. It's mainly because I'm used to investigating people. I have a nephew who sometimes comes to ask me all sorts of questions. Nephew? That's right, his surname is Gua and he's still in high school. Chapter 683. From the start of the broadcast until now, it had been a full hour. The live broadcast room of Singers Institute had already banned more than 1,000 people. A moderator with the nickname Mr. Lee and another Zhang Fei did not care about the consequences. As long as the keywords lip-syncing and theft were mentioned, they would be banned for 7 days. Even some of their own fans who brought their nameplates to inquire about the situation were subjected to the same treatment. Father Wang stared at the live broadcast room speechlessly and helplessly. However, this live streamer didn't seem to be the least bit flustered. That pitch-black half-mask completely concealed the subtle fluctuations in his eyes. Father Wang now seemed to understand a little why this live streamer wore a mask for the live broadcast. Because he didn't have a face. An hour into the live broadcast, Father Wang started to see Yang Zhong interact with the fans in the live broadcast room. So everyone thinks the Starry Sky's Language of Love is a good song? Actually, Father Wang thought that this guy was finally going to find his conscience and apologize, but who knew that the other party would suddenly change his tune? Actually, it's because the song is well written and I sing it well. That's right. As the original singer of this song, my singing is really outstanding. Father Wang, oh that's right, I'm going to upload this song to the music platform right away. I hope everyone can download Singers Institute album when the time comes. There's no version of this song on the online platform yet because I haven't uploaded it yet. After we upload the album later, I hope everyone will download it and support us. If you like it, follow and favorite it, then comment on it. NetEase Cloud Music has it. Just search for The Starry Sky's Language of Love directly. Hearing this, Father Wang felt the urge to smash the keyboard for the first time. He hadn't had this thought when he had been stuck, but after hearing the other party's deceptive and somewhat despicable tone, Father Wang was really infuriated. Father Wang himself was also shocked. He couldn't understand how a person could be so thick-skinned. The most important thing was that this guy actually wanted to upload it before him. This guy was probably crazy. This was a blatant infringement. On the side, Lai Mingming was also amazed when he saw this. If this person does this, he'll probably be sued, right? Definitely. Father Wang said, the copyright to this song is mine. What he's doing is considered theft. Furthermore, it's for commercial use. If it involves a huge amount of money, I'm afraid he'll have to go to jail for several years. However, I don't think he has the guts to do so alone. I'm afraid that the guild backing him is helping him. Lai Mingming nodded. I think so too. This person doesn't look very old. There's no way he would have such guts. Moreover, how many people had been sealed? In Lai Mingming's eyes, the two moderators in the livestream room were no different from lunatics. They were basically the kind of people who would ban anyone the moment they appeared, regardless of the circumstances. It didn't matter if you were asking questions from the perspective of a bystander or asking for an explanation from the perspective of a fan, as long as you mentioned this matter, you would be banned. Previously, Lai Mingming had opened an account to comment on the livestream, but he had typed a question mark and was banned for 7 days straight away. Really, I've never seen such a shameless person. Lai Mingming sighed sincerely. Yeah, this method of denying is really shameless. Compared to my novel's slow update and sloppy word count, I'm practically a clean and refreshing white lotus. Lai Mingming. The matter of this live streamer's copyright infringement wasn't over yet, and Father Wang knew that he needed to come up with more forceful methods. The key now was to collect evidence of the other party's copyright infringement as well as to get the relevant copyright certification procedures for the song, The Starry Sky's Language of Love, in place as soon as possible. Given that Father Wang had decided not to use that big shot behind him, this was bound to be a longer battle than usual, and one that would revolve around fans from different circles on both sides. Which side was stronger between fans of the livestream circle and fans of the novel? Father Wang was really looking forward to seeing. On the other side, Ajwa had already picked out a full set of equipment for himself. The shoes, coat, underwear, socks and even underwear he was wearing were all genuine magic treasures, and most importantly he had never heard of any of them before. It could only be said that Shifu was indeed unconventional. Even the magic treasures he used were different from those on the market. Basically all magic treasures now had a magic treasure software app that could be ranked online, but the magic treasures Wang Ling had given him didn't have any information. Wang Ling had picked them out from the original 8 classes of divine weapons. The 8 classes of divine weapons on the market were all incomplete versions, and a lot of the data was incomplete, so they couldn't be used to enter into the magic treasure software at all. Thus, the magic treasures on the original 8 classes of divine weapons couldn't be found in the online magic treasure software at all. After Audiobook had picked out the magic treasures he wanted, Wang Ling silently noted down their names, then put the exercise book away. He would use this exercise book later to exchange materials with the heavenly Tao to make magic treasures. Furthermore, Wang Ling had deliberately written the handwriting in the exercise book very nicely so that he could trade it with the heavenly Tao for resources of equal value. Furthermore, there were a lot of magic treasures to make this time, and Wang Ling felt that there might be a lack of materials. He wondered if the heavenly Tao would accept copies. Wang Ling cupped his chin in contemplation. Heavenly Tao. It was July 25th on Tuesday in the 14th week of the semester. It was the day when the overseas returnee elites of the Demon Hunters Association would attack number 60 High School, but number 60 High School was as calm as ever without the slightest ripple. At the pancake stall at the school gate, old Uncle Chio was still full of enthusiasm as he served the students early in the morning. As an old man who sold pancakes at number 60 High School gate all year round, he had most likely heard some rumors about number 60 High. As he passed by, Super Chin bought a pancake and put 5 yuan in the money box next to the old man's cart. "Uncle, keep the money." "Got it, just leave it there." Old Chio nodded and spread a layer of batter on the pancake cart with exceptional proficiency. After spreading it out evenly, he directly cracked 2 eggs on it. Super Chin, "Uncle, I only gave you the money for 1 egg." Old Chio, "It's fine, there's an event today, buy 1 get 1 free. Super Chin, "By the way, Uncle, do you know that some criminals claim to be attacking our school today?" Old Chio raised his eyebrows. "You mean the Demon Hunters Association?" Super Chin nodded. "That's right. It's that Demon Hunters Association. Uncle, aren't you afraid? You're so close to the school, what if you get involved?" Old Chio, "What's there to be afraid of? I've been selling pancakes at your school gate for so many years, I've seen all kinds of monsters." Super Chin, this was indeed the truth. Old Chio had been selling pancakes at number 60 High School's gate for many years, and it was said that the seniors from previous years had all seen him. And most importantly, almost everyone at number 60 High School had bought Old Chio's pancakes. Old Lee at the school gate especially loved them. "Old Chio, the grass on the grave of that shadow stream who came to pick a fight with your school a few months ago, is it taller than a person now?" Chapter 684. Uncle Chio had been at number 60 High for a long time, which was obvious to everyone at number 60 High. This was an old man who had witnessed the hardships of number 60 High's history. Some people said that the reason number 60 High had been able to survive so many disasters without collapsing was partly because of Uncle Chio. The truth was that there had been a lot of legends about Uncle Chio over the years, at least in number 60 High's Tieba circle. Many people felt that Uncle Chio was a hidden expert with a mysterious identity. Moreover, there were several times when people saw Uncle Chio making pancakes. He could even crack an egg and create a yin-yang symbol. It was also because of this that legends about Uncle Chio could be said to be endless, and there were all kinds of rumors on the internet. Although Wang Ling hadn't been at school for long, he had eaten Uncle Chio's fruit jianbing before. Furthermore, he felt that it was currently the best thing he had eaten apart from crispy noodle snacks. The main point was that the 5 yuan fruit jianbing was full of ingredients. Sweet sauce, chili, eggs, crackers, youtiao, tenderloins, sausages, it had everything. When he arrived at school that morning, he happened to see Super Chin buying fruit jianbing. After thinking for a bit, he also fished out 5 yuan to buy one. "Wang Ling, you're also here to buy pancakes?" Super Chin greeted him as he nibbled on a freshly baked fruit jianbing. Today, Uncle Chio was holding an event. Buy 1 get 1 free. Just like when he had made Super Chin pancakes before, Uncle Chio directly cracked 2 eggs. In the end, 4 egg yolks popped out. These 2 eggs were actually double yolks. "Wang Ling," Uncle Chio was shocked, and so was Super Chin. "What kind of operation was this?" Uncle Chio smiled. "This student's luck is quite good." After the bread was served, Uncle Chio asked, "Classmate, do you want fried dough sticks or crispy bread?" Wang Ling took out a pack of crispy noodle snacks from his pocket, split it in half and handed it to Uncle Chio. "Uncle Chio, today, the morning at number 60 High School was quieter than they had imagined. It had already been a whole night since the Demon Hunters Association's notice of attack broke out yesterday. Last night, Number 60 High had sent a lot of teachers out for emergency home visits to carry out all kinds of coordination and pacification work. But even so, there were still some parents who chose to ask for leave for their children and did not come to school. As for how many parents would choose to transfer schools after this incident, that wasn't something he could estimate. In the beginning, Wang Ling had chosen number 60 High for the sake of a peaceful study life. In all aspects, whether it was its geographical location, school history, or overall evaluation results, number 60 High actually looked mediocre compared with other ordinary high schools. But the damnable thing was that what had happened in the first 10 or so weeks of school made number 60 High not seem like an ordinary school at all. Would the Demon Hunters Association's attack proceed smoothly? Wang Ling felt that this was a question mark, because his eyelid warning had stopped. On the other side, Father Wang was still engaged in a battle with Live Streamer Singers Institute who had stolen songs, and the fans on both sides had escalated the situation further. In addition to the many fans who supported Father Wang and boycotted live streamers who stole songs, there was also a key figure who had directly caused this war to escalate to a white-hot state. This person was none other than Taoist Guang, who had just entered the live streaming circle as a live streamer in the last few weeks. Taoist Guang was now the #1 all-around big brother on the Cultivation live streaming platform. In just a few short weeks, he had accumulated millions of fans, directly breaking the website's previous history. Now, as long as Taoist Guang started a live stream, his popularity would directly soar to more than 10 million in less than 10 minutes. The reason why Taoist Guang could become so popular was partly due to timing and luck, and partly because he had created this small island himself. Every day he could think of new ways to live stream material for the audience to live stream non-stop. He could even create fake spirit beasts made of clay on the island to maximize the effect of the program. It was very normal for live streamers to create program effects, but even if they wanted to do so, they had to ensure that they had the ability to do so. In the end, relying on crooked methods wasn't the right way to go. After learning that Father Wang's song had been infringed, Taoist Guang's attitude was very clear. Not only did he change the title of his live stream room, he directly changed it to Wolf Fong Live Streaming Platform, Film Entertainment, Dean, Steals Songs and Lip Sings. He even publicly posted on Weibo about stealing songs and lip singing. This was the fuse that ignited the whole incident. Internally, Taoist Guang knew that this senior Wang was Ling Jinren's father, so how could he be an ordinary person? Taoist Guang would definitely stand on Father Wang's side without even thinking about it. But there was no way Taoist Guang would explain this to the outside world, so after obtaining Father Wang's permission, Taoist Guang directly announced something to the public. Currently, the person with the ID has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated today, and who was called Brother Sleep by many water friends in the live stream room was the famous guru author Wang Situ himself. When this news came out, it wasn't just the live stream circle, but also the novel circle exploded. Damn, so this person is Wang Situ? My god. Wang Situ is also a fan of Brother Sleep? Hehe, I'm afraid that live streamer is done for. Not only has he offended Wang Situ, he's also offended Lord Island. Wang Situ has given Lord Island so many gifts, their relationship definitely isn't ordinary. Thus, as a live streamer on another platform, Taoist Guang had even more reason to help hammer that live streamer Singers Institute for stealing songs. Now, Taoist Guang was the big brother of the Cultivation livestream platform, while Father Wang was a famous internet guru. If these two people joined hands to hammer a live streamer, it was basically a declaration that this live streamer was done for. Lai Mingming stared at the screen and sighed. This person is also stubborn. Wouldn't it have been over if he had apologized earlier? Some people won't shed tears until they see the coffin, you don't understand. Father Wang sighed. If you don't believe me, look. Father Wang opened the live streamer's live stream room and saw that the other party was sitting inside as if nothing had happened, completely ignoring the matter of stealing songs and lip singing. This person is a little bold. Lai Mingming was speechless. He's only good at playing dead. This person was the same last year. When he ran into trouble, he played dead and didn't respond. Then after a while, the people hammering him got tired and slowly stopped pursuing the matter. But the problem is that he's never met someone who's stubborn. Father Wang laughed. Daring to steal a song I gave to my wife, I think this guy doesn't want to live anymore? What do you want to do? Lai Mingming asked. Chapter 685. Yang Zhong didn't live stream that day, and instead used his illness as an excuse to ask the audience in the live stream room for a day off. However, the moderators in the live stream room didn't ask for a day off. Moderators Mr. Li and Zhang Fei continued to ban people, and in less than 2 days they had banned more than 10,000 people. Basically all of whom were onlookers who had learned about this from Father Wang. It had always been a major characteristic of netizens to join in on the fun. Although the audiences in the novel circle and the livestream circle were different, the users were of similar ages, so this news was very sweet for the onlookers in both circles. Yang Zhong was well aware that he was now in the teeth of the storm, so it was actually very important for him to insist that he hadn't stolen the song and temporarily avoid the limelight. This was what they had done to deal with the crisis last year, and the results had been very good. But this time, Yang Zhong had underestimated the power of Cultivation Chinese Network's veteran guru author Wang Situ. After Taoist Guang's support last night, Yang Zhong already felt that it would be hard for him to turn things around. President, what should we do now? He had no choice but to ask Lang Bei for help. Shadow Fool Guild wasn't a small guild, it had over 100 signed artists and he was one of them. Yang Zhong had always believed that the president wouldn't give up on him so easily. This year he had made a lot of money for Shadow Fool by stealing songs and lip-syncing. Furthermore, it was Shadow Fool who had specially signed him after spending hundreds of thousands of yuan in compensation for the accident last year. Yang Zhong had always felt that this guild had feelings for him and wouldn't give up on him so easily. On the other end of the line, Shadow Fool Guild's president Lang Bei no longer sounded as confident as he had at the beginning. This was because the two people they had offended this time both had a huge number of fans, and it would actually be very difficult for them to contend with them if things went on like this. The truth was that before he picked up the phone, President Lang Bei was still weighing the stakes. Shadow Fool Guild wasn't a charity guild, but a live stream guild. With so many people to support, it was all about profit. Last year, Shadow Fool had signed Yang Zhong again despite the criticism, and had even paid a huge sum of money to pay off his former guild's compensation for his commercial value. But now they were in the teeth of the storm. Every move was much more difficult than last year's. Don't worry. We've already uploaded the album first. You can take a screenshot and post it on Weibo. First, stabilize your fans. That's the most important thing. President Lang Bei said, as for Wang Situ, I've already contacted the Cultivation Chinese Network and asked for his contact information. I'll talk to him in detail later. If this matter can be settled privately, both sides can send a message to clarify the situation, and it can be a perfect ending. Compared to last year, you've gained a huge number of fans. All right. Thank you, President. Guild leader, you must help me this time. Hearing President Lang Bei's words, Yang Zhong was relieved. As long as his backer hadn't abandoned him, there was still room for redemption. On the other side, after the call ended, President Lang Bei, who was sitting in his office, rubbed his eyes and felt a deep headache. Lord President, are you still not going to give up on him? Asked a secretary dressed in revealing clothes. It's too early to give up now. He still has some value. President Lang Bei muttered to himself, although this matter has blown up and it's basically impossible for us to clean it up, if we can reach a private settlement with that Mr. Wang Situ, that would definitely be the best for us. The secretary in revealing clothes understood. It was all because President Lang Bei felt that Yang Zhong still had some value. This year, Shadow Fool Guild had made a lot of money from Yang Zhong's commercial value. Although the livestream room had been in the teeth of the storm these days, it had also received a lot of gift income. A lot of loyal fans didn't hesitate to spend huge sums of money to send small gifts like crazy in the livestream room in order to cover up the negative and questioning bullet messages. Then what should we do next? Asked the scantily clad secretary. It's very simple. President Lang Bei said, contact Wang Situ and that Taoist Guang first. Ask them what they think about this matter. If they just want compensation, we can pay it on Yang Zhong's behalf. Of course, if it's a sky-high price, that's another matter. Then should we give up on him? When that time comes, of course we can only give up on him. President Lang Bei said, Yang Zhong isn't clean to begin with. If it wasn't for the fact that he still has some commercial value, I would have terminated the contract with him long ago. To me, he's just a pawn that can be discarded at any time. Lord President, you really don't give us any face. The secretary in revealing clothes smiled slightly, went straight to President Lang Bei's side, and then sat down on his lap. At that moment, the secretary's cell phone rang. President Lang Bei hugged the secretary. Who's calling? It's him, an express delivery. The secretary directly turned on the hands-free function. Then a voice came through the phone. Is this Mr. Shin? Your express delivery has arrived. The secretary in revealing clothes stood up. All right. I'll go get it right away. Elsewhere, number 60 High was still as calm as ever. It had already been a long time since the Demon Hunters Association's grand plan to attack. But it was almost noon, and there was still no movement from those so-called overseas returnees elites of the Demon Hunters Association. Many number 60 High students started to mock them in their class groups in Chieba. Are they coming or not? If they don't, we're going to have lunch. Seriously, they go back on their word. We've been so nervous for so long. What's wrong with these people? They're worse than Shadow Stream. Back then, when Shadow Stream came, at least they were able to enter the school. Don't tell me this bunch can't even enter the main gate of number 60 High? Wang Ling quietly glanced at the messages in Chieba and the class group, and also looked out the window with a strange expression. The sun was exceptionally bright today. There was no sign of a storm at all. What on earth was going on? He was also puzzled. His eyelid had clearly twitched earlier, but it had suddenly stopped. Could something have happened to the other side? Stop waiting, do what you need to do and eat. Super Chin couldn't help laughing. I heard that Mother Wan held a food tasting event for the parents at number 60 High a while ago, and it seems that there was only one parent who showed up. He even packed some fried meatballs when he left. Say, if this parent was from the Demon Hunters Association and brought the meatballs back, would that group of people be directly poisoned to death? Chapter 686. When Elder Ji Xing woke up, his whole body ached and he didn't even have the strength to stand up. Cold, endless cold pierced into his bones, making him feel extremely afraid. What on earth had happened yesterday? Elder Ji Xing couldn't remember. His body was enveloped by a strong sense of exhaustion, and it was as if his bones had gone soft. His whole body had sunk into a semi-paralyzed state. He couldn't get up at all. Had he been poisoned? How was that possible? Elder Ji Xing closed his eyes and tried to circulate his spirit energy to check out his surroundings, but halfway through, it actually got stuck in his golden core. He could still circulate his spirit energy, which meant that he hadn't been poisoned. At the very least, he could still circulate his spirit energy. If it had been an extremely strong poison, all his meridians would definitely have been directly sealed off, and he wouldn't have been able to circulate his spirit energy normally. Taking a deep breath, Elder Ji Xing tried to use his spirit energy to break through the shackles of his golden core. This was very risky because whether he succeeded or not, forcibly using spirit energy to break through the shackles in his body would definitely cause very serious internal injuries. And now, Elder Ji Xing's injuries were already very serious. But Elder Ji Xing had no choice but to do it, because he had to understand what on earth was going on. At this thought, Elder Ji Xing gritted his teeth. Enduring the pain in his body, he started to exert force on his golden core. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling, like an adult suffering from constipation, and Elder Ji Xing's entire face turned red. In the end, even the blue veins on his forehead bulged. A man of the Demon Hunters Association, he would never admit defeat. A few minutes later, Elder Ji Xing suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood with a wah sound. At this point, he had already broken through the shackles of his golden core and could circulate his spirit energy normally. However, the internal injuries caused by breaking through the shackles made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He couldn't move a muscle now, and he couldn't even take out the first aid pills he had prepared on him. This was the most infuriating part. Sometimes, the most tragic thing in life wasn't when a person died with no money to spend, but when a person was about to die and couldn't take medicine. One step at a time, Elder Ji Xing took a deep breath and did his best to calm down. Now wasn't the time to get angry because getting angry would only worsen his injuries. At that moment, his spirit energy started to circulate normally, and Elder Ji Xing finally relied on a cultivator's spiritual senses to see what was going on around the military tent. Everyone had fallen. Moreover, there were even some elders who had completely lost their auras and directly died. The breathing of the surviving elders was also very weak. Elder Ji Xing was extremely stunned. What the hell was going on? How did they get wiped out so suddenly? But what was even more inconceivable was that Elder Ji Xing realized that he couldn't recall what had happened last night at all. It seemed like his memory was a little broken. At that moment, Elder Ji Xing's face was snow-white and he was drenched in cold sweat. He really couldn't imagine what kind of almighty they had offended to actually go this far. They were the elite members of the Demon Hunters Association groomed overseas. The weakest were itinerant immortal experts, but at that moment, some had fainted and some had suddenly died. In the blink of an eye, they had been completely wiped out. And the most terrifying thing was that Elder Ji Xing couldn't figure out what on earth had happened. The coordinates of the military tent where they had organized this operation were absolutely confidential, and a barrier had been set up inside and outside the mountain forest. If someone had invaded last night with so many of them, they should have sensed it long ago. However, not only did that Almighty not cause any commotion, but he infiltrated them in an absolutely silent manner, killing them without them noticing. In the end, he was even able to erase the memories in their minds. At this thought, Elder Jixing couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. What a frightening method this was. Elder Jixing really couldn't remember, and the most terrifying thing was that Elder Mingren, who had taken 9 taels for psychological treatment, had also collapsed to the ground and was completely dead. Who could tell him what on earth had happened yesterday? Several hours before the Demon Hunters Association was wiped out, Elder Mingren, who had taken 9 taels for psychological treatment, returned to the military tent where the Demon Hunters Association was located. Because it had been discovered in time, 9 taels psychological treatment had gone very smoothly. The psychologist had sprayed 9 taels with an accelerant so that they would grow thick hair again and regain their original confidence. But as soon as he approached the military tent, Elder Mingren sensed that there was clearly something wrong with the aura inside. He frowned deeply. Had something happened? Elder Mingren immediately reacted, because he could clearly sense that the auras of the elders in the military tent were very weak, as if they were injured. But strangely, Elder Mingren didn't sense any enemy auras nearby. "QB, we are going to prepare for battle," Elder Mingren said, and immediately a golden Ryatsu enveloped his body. This is a buff method that can double his combat effectiveness on the basis of the QB chakra and Ryatsu's Ryatsu. However, this form can't be maintained for too long because the QB form itself consumes a lot of spiritual power in the body. At present, the way they use chakra is the same as that of Elder Poisonous Dragon. At the cost of consuming fat, chakra is integrated into spiritual power as a second source so that it can be used together. Elder Mingren believed that he was invincible in this mode, because in the 9 taels form, he had a more terrifying regenerative ability than President Bai. Although it could only last for 2 minutes, it was clearly enough to deal with an enemy. Besides, even if he really couldn't beat them, he could choose to run. Taking a deep breath, Elder Mingren chose to step into the military tent. When he lifted the tent flap, he would never forget the scene in front of him. All of the elders had fallen to the ground, including Elder Jixing, the chief commander of the operation this time. There were even a few elders who were completely dead and completely silent. He had to contact President Bai as soon as possible. Frowning, Elder Mingren cancelled the 9 taels form, then took out his phone and dialed President Bai's line. While he waited for the call, Elder Mingren carefully examined his surroundings again. There was fine wine and fried meatballs on the table. It was clear that Elder Jixing and the others had been celebrating not long ago, toasting to the smooth progress of tomorrow's plan. Elder Mingren remembered seeing Elder Jixing's WeChat moments before, and he had liked it and said that he was on his way back. Who would have thought that not long after that, they had all met with misfortune? Elder Mingren sighed deeply. He picked up a fried meatball on the table, put it in his mouth and drank it down with the leftover wine on the table. This meatball and this glass of wine represented his mourning for Elder Jixing and the other elders. Chapter 687. That afternoon, Audiobook was feeling gloomy in his office. He had been receiving complaints all morning from enthusiastic citizens, and the main complaints were about number 60 high school. Many of them were very confused as to why number 60 high school wasn't on holiday today and was continuing with classes. Although the Demon Hunters Association's revenge plan had yet to take place, they were a bunch of cunning criminals. God knew what kind of perverted things they would do to the children. Over the last few days, there had been a lot of injuries caused by these psychopaths. For example, not long ago, there had been a scum who should have been struck by lightning for stabbing 2 elementary school kids on their way to school. This kind of person should be sliced into pieces and sent to hell. Their souls would never be able to reincarnate. Why did you do it to kids? If you're so capable, come at Ling Jinren. When Audiobook saw this news, he had been furious. So it wasn't that he couldn't understand these problems, but there were many times when he couldn't decide on his own when it came to suspending classes. There were times when a person in a high position was even more restrained, and he had to be cautious in everything he did. This time, number 60 high school hadn't suspended classes because of a variety of factors, although Audiobook didn't know what Headmaster Chen and the higher-ups had considered before making this decision. But as headmaster of number 60 high school, Headmaster Chen had never made a wrong decision, and this was indeed the case. The overseas returnee elites of the Demon Hunters Association had issued a notice of revenge in the morning, but it was now afternoon, and there was no sign of them. Brother Joie, it seems like there's no movement now? The director's office and the deputy director's office were in the same room. Zhong Lang looked at the time, then poked his head out to ask Audiobook. Audiobook shrugged and spread his hands. He also didn't know what on earth was going on, and for some reason, Audiobook now had a very good feeling. It felt like a huge shadow was slowly enveloping him, which in the end turned into a wok that directly fell on his head. While Audiobook's imagination was running wild, his phone suddenly vibrated. He looked at the caller ID. It was Secretary Dakong calling. It can't be that incredible, right? Audiobook's lips twitched and he picked up the phone. From the other end of the line came the old secretary's merciless praise. Little Joie, you did a great job. Audiobook, what did he do this time? Secretary Dakong, we found the corpse of an overseas returnee elite from the Demon Hunters Association in a mountain forest, including Elder Ji Xing who had organized this plan. Now Elder Ji Xing was the only one left alive. The overseas returnee elite group of the Demon Hunters Association had been wiped out. Tell me honestly, did that teacher behind you make a move again? Old secretary, don't say you, I know it's all arranged with a single calculation. Secretary Dakong, if that senior expert is willing to come out and meet me, I'll welcome him at any time. He's helped us a lot. Audiobook, so now, Secretary Dakong, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and hold a press conference. This time, the overseas returnee elite group of the Demon Hunters Association has been wiped out. I want to see what the netizens have to say. Audiobook, in the end, the Demon Hunters Association's grand plan to organize overseas returnee elites to attack number 60 High had ended with the deaths of almost all of them, except for two people who hadn't died. One was Elder Ji Xing, who was struggling bitterly, and the other was Elder Yaren, who was in the middle of a ghostly resurrection and had already been detained and arrested. These two were the first and second-ranked experts among the overseas returnee elites this time. Even so, they had already completely lost the ability to fight, and wouldn't be able to participate in battle for the time being. It was still peaceful at noon at number 60 High. Uncle Chio's fruit pancake stall was ready to close up at noon. Just as Uncle Chio was about to push his cart away, a guest with a snow-white face holding a black umbrella suddenly appeared. This person's aura was very gloomy and cold, and when he approached, even the temperature of the stove on the pancake cart seemed to drop a few degrees. A small black umbrella covered half of the newcomer's face, and it was impossible to see his full appearance. Uncle Chio raised his eyebrows and then sighed silently in his heart. Sir, I don't have enough batter here, so I can only make one last pancake. Do you want crispy pancakes or youtiao? The ingredients for my pancake aren't very fresh at noon. If you still want it, this old man can give you a discount. The man under the black umbrella said quietly, youtiao. His words were concise and to the point, and he didn't say anything more. All right. Uncle Chio nodded and started to make the pancake. When he cracked the egg, Uncle Chio couldn't help sighing. It's really peaceful today. Hearing this, the man under the black umbrella was silent. People are like making pancakes. In the end, you have to make a careful choice whether you want to add sweet sauce or spicy sauce. There are some places you can provoke and some places you can't. At this point, Uncle Chio had already finished making a pancake, and he very familiarly wrapped it in oil paper. Here, young man, your pancake. This customer with the black umbrella stared at the pancake and didn't move for a long time as he watched Uncle Chio push the cart away from the end of the road. Under the black umbrella, President Bai was utterly stupefied. He hadn't been standing still for a long time just now because he had stopped to think, but because he had been frozen in place by a powerful aura, which made it impossible for him to move even half a step. Could it be that this number 60 High really was a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons? Even an old uncle selling pancakes at the entrance was so terrifying? President Bai narrowed his eyes deeply as he started to weigh the pros and cons. Then he lowered his head and took a bite of the pancake in his hand. It was fried. On the other side at the window of Grade 1 Class 3, Wang Ling secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and his unfocused eyes refocused. The Great Soul Transformation spell just now was a way to attach one's soul to another person's body. He had used Uncle Chio's body to give President Bai a warning. Although he wasn't sure if it would work, it could be said that this was Wang Ling's ultimatum. Mother Wang had taught him to be a polite child since he was young, and to be polite before resorting to force. Wang Ling felt that his warning just now could be said to be very polite. Chapter 688. President Bai was now very upset about the failure of his revenge plan. That was a whole 15 overseas returnee elites of the Demon Hunters Association. Now not a single one of them was left. President Bai frowned. He was well aware that he could no longer make the decision on this matter because he was afraid of taking risks. Their Demon Hunters Association's main mission in Wuxia Nation was in fact to fight for the Grade 13 spells and Beast King's remains. This wouldn't be easy because President Bai was well aware that Wuxia Nation had already noticed their movements and was bound to set up strict defenses in Beast King's remains. Given that the Demon Hunters Association's fighting strength had been greatly reduced, everything had become very difficult to predict. President Bai sighed. He had no choice but to send a text message to Night Chief's highest-ranking leader, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor. Lord Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, it's me, Baizha. I'm panicking right now. Abroad, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor received a message from President Bai asking for help. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, truly useless trash. In the end, he still revealed a flaw. Lord Spirit Emperor, what countermeasures do you have? Asked a delicate and elegant young man. He had a folding fan in his hand and was dressed in a very old-fashioned way. This person was called Dylan. After President Edmark, the head of Night Chief's 6 generals, had been killed by that execution ball, Dylan, as his second-in-command, had taken over all of President Edmark's power networks. What do you think? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor looked at the young man and asked for his opinion. Compared with President Edmark's brash style, Second President Dylan was a solid strategist. I suggest that we withdraw Baizha and let our people take over before the plan is carried out. That way we can minimize our losses. Second President Dylan said, of course, even if President Bai comes back, he'll still have to face Your Excellency's punishment. With Your Excellency's permission, you can have him atone for his crimes there before coming back. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor nodded. Punishment was definitely necessary. Before the master plan was in motion, they had mobilized overseas elites to launch an attack without fully understanding the enemy's strength for a bit of personal grudge. In the end, they had fallen into the other party's trap and had been wiped out. If they weren't punished for this, it would have an extremely negative impact on the entire Night Chief. Because of this, they had to be punished as a warning to the rest. Given the seriousness of this incident, it wouldn't be too much to dismiss President Bai completely and have him die as an apology. Second President Dylan said, President Bai thought that he already had enough information on number 60 high, but now it looks like it wasn't even worth mentioning. Otherwise, the entire elite group of the Demon Hunters Association wouldn't have suffered such a fate. It's just a small foundation establishment high school, but so many experts have gathered here. I have a feeling that number 60 high might be a tough nut to crack. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor stood up from the throne, his expression already resolute. He decided that apart from sending someone to take over the next big plan, he would also have President Bai figure out the ins and outs of number 60 high. At the very least, he had to know what kind of person the great senior behind number 60 high school was. President Bai's ability to recover is extremely strong, but since he sent a message asking for help this time, Lord Spirit Emperor should also give him some help. Only by exerting enough pressure can we force out the senior behind him, President Dylan said. Yes, I've already passed on a technique to him. It's a technique that I personally developed, the spiritual loan technique. The spiritual loan technique? Yes, it's a technique that uses my venerable self as the main body and is controlled through a soul imprint. The borrower can borrow money to greatly increase their strength in a short period of time. It just so happens that this technique is still in the experimental stage. Since Baizha is willing to be the lab rat, there's no harm in letting him try it out. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor smiled. It's more cost-effective than a school loan, and there's no interest. You just need to use your lifespan to pay off the debt, and it's supported by installments. President Dylan. After school that day, Wang Ling vaguely sensed that something wasn't right. It was still calm inside and outside the school, but Wang Ling somehow felt that there was a hidden murderous intent. His intuition had always been very accurate and would never be wrong. Judging from the aura, this hostile aura was coming from President Bai, whom Wang Ling had warned before. Sure enough, in the end he couldn't hold it in anymore. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Pretending that nothing had happened, he put his hands in his pockets and left the school. Everyone in class was enthusiastically discussing summer camp activities. Since they were going to camp out in Beast King's remains, a lot of them were discussing what they should bring with them. In the end, Wang Ling didn't participate in the discussion. Wang Ling, what do you think we should bring with us? Super Chin turned his head to ask Wang Ling for his opinion, but realized that Wang Ling had already disappeared. Where was he? Super Chin rubbed his head. Wang Ling has already left. Dopey Guo pointed to the window. This guy follows us every day after school, why is he leaving so fast today? As he said this, his expression suddenly changed dramatically as he looked out the window. Holy shit. Come and look. Frightened by this cry of alarm, everyone crowded around the window, and then saw a twisted black crack suddenly appear at the school gate. More than 10 tentacle-like objects directly separated from the crack and directly pulled Wang Ling into it. This scene was too sudden, and the students behind Wang Ling screamed and ran back. Almost everyone in Grade 1 Class 3 saw this scene, and they stared blankly as Wang Ling was swallowed up by this black crack in the space. A lot of people were so scared that they got goosebumps, and several girls in class directly cried out in alarm. Hurry and tell teacher. Little Peanut's face was deathly pale. Super Chin and Dopey Guo had already dashed out. About 5 minutes later, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's small villa received a call. It was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal who answered the phone. Because he had attended the parent-teacher conference in Wang Ling's place before, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home phone number and cell phone were the contact details for the parent-teacher conference. At that time, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had attended the parent-teacher conference on behalf of Father and Mother Wang, and had given himself an alias, Wang Lei. Hello, are you Mr. Wang Ling's father, Wang Lei? Director Shi's voice came from the other end of the line. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was blank for a moment before he replied, Yes. I am. It's like this? Mr. Wang Lei, we are currently following up on this matter urgently, so can you please remain calm? Director Shi said. Alright, I'll stay calm. Please speak first. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was confused. Mr. Wang Lei, classmate Wang Ling was swallowed up by a black crack after school today. Our initial suspicion is that President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association is taking personal revenge, and he just happened to capture classmate Wang Ling. Director Shi's tone was very downcast. As teachers, we know that we can't shirk our responsibilities, but we still want to tell Mr. Wang Lei to prepare for the worst. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded seriously. That's it? Director Shi, yes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's face was unperturbed. Alright, I got it. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up first. Let me know when my son's body is found. Chapter 689. Director Shi was stupefied. How could there be such a parent in the world? In disbelief, she looked at the phone number in the parent's address book to confirm that she hadn't called the wrong person. But when she had called him just now, it had felt like she had called a fake father. Previously, there had always been rumors in school that student Wang Ling came from a poor family and had a very cold personality. Now that Director Shi thought about it, she felt that this had something to do with his family education. Student Wang Ling's family circumstances were a little tragic. Feeling this way, Director of Teaching Director Shi's maternal instincts overflowed in that moment. She suddenly felt that she usually cared too little about student Wang Ling. Although this child was in the elite class and his academic performance definitely wouldn't be bad, she still had to pay attention to the psychological factor. Number 60 High School Style advocated two things: educating people and teaching. The importance of educating people comes before teaching. It wasn't right for teachers to blindly pursue grades, and the students' spiritual education was equally important. Headmaster Chin had emphasized this point many times at the staff meeting. Now, Director Shi's mind was full of regret as she made the call. She didn't know if student Wang Ling was still alive. But Director Shi and the other number 60 high teachers all had heavy hearts at that moment. Elsewhere, in the office of the General Administration of 100 schools, not long after the old secretary's commendation call, the bad news about Wang Ling came again. This time it was Headmaster Chin himself who called Audiobook. Some students were surprised, and as Headmaster Chen couldn't escape the blame. On the phone, Headmaster Chen's voice was very sorrowful, but Audiobook still didn't know which student had been taken away. Student Zhua. This was Headmaster Chen's habit of addressing this old graduate. I already know, Headmaster. Audiobook's voice was also very gloomy. No one had expected that after the Demon Hunters Association's attack on number 60 High's elite group of overseas returnees had died, that President Bai would actually launch another attack and abduct a student. I'm ready to resign. Headmaster Chin sighed deeply. If this student suffers misfortune because of this mistake, I will feel guilty for the rest of my life. Headmaster, Audiobook was moved. Calm down first, Headmaster. How about we think of a way together? Maybe that student is still alive. He's just a foundation establishment student. His body wouldn't be able to withstand being sucked directly into a space fissure like this. Headmaster Chen was very agitated. Ajua, can I ask Headmaster Chen which student it is exactly? You've seen that student before. Headmaster Chen replied, Student Wang Ling from grade 1, class 3. Ajua cried out in his heart, Oh my God. Master had been captured by demons. Half an hour before the incident, Wang Ling had already sensed something strange at the school gate. It was the earliest time for grade 1 students to finish school. Usually after school, students would stay in class to discuss their homework for a while before leaving. The reason why Wang Ling had left especially early was because he had sensed the murderous intent at the school gate. With his king's eye, he saw that there was a hidden space trap there. As long as a student walked out of the school gate, they would be sucked into the space. Sure enough, that obstinate person still came. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. There were always some people in this world who didn't understand human language, and Wang Ling felt that he had already done all he could. The moment he was sucked into the space, Wang Ling's face was expressionless. The tear in space didn't affect his body at all. Furthermore, the moment he was sucked into the space, he had already cast a spell to eliminate the space trap and directly block the crack so that he was the only one who was sucked in. After landing on the ground, Wang Ling carefully looked around. This was a completely independent space, and Wang Ling's initial judgment was that this was probably the internal space of a magic artifact. The entire space was a snow-white world that seemed to have no end. That President Bai had used a magic artifact and his own spell to separate this space. Wang Ling brushed off the crumbs on his school uniform, which had been left behind after he had fallen into the space crack. These were the flotsam that had been drawn in from other spaces when the space crack had formed. In the end, these flotsam had been broken down into very dirty particles and debris. Wang Ling was a little unhappy. This stuff was hard to wash, his school uniform was dirty, and he didn't know if enchanted detergent would be able to wash it clean. While Wang Ling was thinking this, the space in front of him distorted slightly, and a young man with a deathly pale face holding a black umbrella walked out of the space. This person was none other than President Bai. President Bai's aura was already different from what Wang Ling had sensed before. We should put an end to our grudge today. President Bai let go of Wang Ling, and the small black umbrella floated behind him to reveal his entire face. At that moment, Wang Ling saw a very deep black mark between President Bai's eyebrows. This was proof that he had offered his body and soul for a trade. As the Heavenly Tao said, everything in the world was in balance, and equivalent exchange was an unchanging iron law. Given President Bai's original level, if he wanted to improve his strength, he could only rely on this shortcut to become stronger by selling his soul and sacrificing his lifespan. President Bai stared at Wang Ling, full of confidence in himself after becoming stronger. I've already thoroughly investigated your strength. You're a true immortal, right? Wang Ling, Your Excellency has sabotaged our Demon Hunters Association's grand plan time and time again, and our association won't let Your Excellency have an easy time. President Bai's voice was low as he stared fixedly at Wang Ling and gnashed his teeth. In order to deal with Your Excellency, I didn't hesitate to sacrifice 1,000 years of my lifespan in exchange for this opportunity to improve. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. He had indeed heard Mr. Liu mention some information about President Bai before. This President Bai had an extremely powerful regenerative ability to begin with, and it was even more terrifying than Elder Yaren's. It was the kind of instantaneous self-healing ability that might have already healed while he was still being beaten. Now that President Bai had been strengthened overall, Wang Ling felt that his self-healing ability should be even stronger than before. Wang Ling remembered that he had slapped the Master of Immortal Mansion before. 2 slaps to deal with Evil Sword God, so here was the problem: to deal with this President Bai, how many times could he slap him? Wang Ling didn't know yet, but he felt a little irritated. It was almost time for the final exams, and he had a lot of homework to do when he got home, which he hadn't finished yet. Chapter 690. After using the Spirit Power Loan spell to increase his strength in a short period of time, President Bai was clearly more confident in himself. In fact, choosing to trade with Night Ghost Spirit Emperor was something he had no choice but to do. Before the grand plan had been carried out, he had made a major strategic mistake in settling a personal grudge, which had led to the collective annihilation of the 15 overseas returnee elites of the Demon Hunters Association. Even when he returned, he wouldn't be able to escape Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's punishment for making such a mistake. Thus, President Bai had carefully considered his decision to attack Wang Ling this time. He had to redeem himself by doing a good deed, and before returning to Night Chief's headquarters, he had to get rid of this big problem in front of him as much as possible. Even if he couldn't get rid of him, severely wounding him would be good. In any case, there was no way he would lose in a fight. Even if his overall battle strength wasn't good, President Bai could still use attrition tactics. His powerful self-healing ability was his greatest source of confidence in this tactic. President Bai was a very cautious person and also a very cunning character, which could be seen from their previous encounters. He would never fight a battle he had no chance of winning. But despite all his calculations, President Bai had missed one point. In this world, not everyone could be viewed with common sense. In the isolated space of the magic treasure layer. In the blink of an eye, the small black umbrella hovering above President Bai's head started to exert force. A black light was emitted from the small umbrella and linked to President Bai's back. President Bai's entire body then directly flashed in front of Wang Ling. This process was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, this speed had already reached the limit of a peak late true immortal. This small black umbrella was a spatial magic treasure that was just one step away from upgrading to a world-defying magic weapon. However, the power it had erupted with so far was still a little beyond Wang Ling's expectations. When all was said and done, this was a powerful magic weapon made from 49 holy beast hides. Even if it was a first-class holy weapon, it was still much more powerful than a holy weapon of the same level. The ability to teleport when linked to its owner like this was very troublesome. If this President Bai collected all the hides and upgraded it to world-defying level, this small black umbrella might have the ability to distort time and space. He had his reasons for coming to this conclusion, because the independent space he was currently in had been created by this small black umbrella. The ability to open up an independent space was not something that an ordinary grade 1 sacred artifact could accomplish. Even among the 8 classes of divine artifacts, the most space-type grade 1 sacred artifacts could do was to jump through space and move across a large area. However, not only could this small black umbrella carry out large-scale movement, it could also independently open up a space to achieve spatial stripping. Its spatial attributes were diverse and complex, and its functions were very comprehensive. If he could level it up to the world-defying level, all the spatial attributes would be improved. The next step would be to distort space-time and even freeze space. This Wuxia umbrella was a dangerous magic weapon, and Wang Ling had already made up his mind to retrieve it after this battle and then give it to Little Silver for safekeeping. President Bai didn't choose to hold back. The moment he appeared in front of Wang Ling in a flash, he struck out with his palm. Primordial World Stripping Palm. This was also a spell that combined the Wuxia umbrella's spatial characteristics. Once the palm was hit, it would be directly torn to shreds and absorbed by the space. Wang Ling saw through this palm with his king's eye, and then dodged to the side. President Bai's palm directly distorted the air and tore a hole in this independent space. Then, the power of the Wuxia umbrella swiftly sewed up this hole and the space swiftly recovered. So dangerous, Wang Ling sighed inwardly. Fortunately, he had reacted quickly. Otherwise, his school uniform would have been torn. Wang Ling had always disliked number 60 high school uniform because it was very ugly, so he had never intended to enchant it. Now he felt that it would be better to enchant it a little. At the very least, it wouldn't be torn and it would also remove dirt and be washable. This is my original spell. Your Excellency, you don't look too good. President Bai sneered. He hadn't used his full strength in that palm just now, but he had already seen the youngster's expression turn very unsightly. This showed that his palm just now had a sufficient deterrent effect. There was hope for this battle. President Bai sneered in his heart. Wang Ling, there were times when you had to admit that there were indeed a few big illusions in life. For example, when it came to studying. This class isn't important. You'll understand the content when you go back. The exam shouldn't be so difficult. If I can't do it, neither can anyone else. I'll revise properly after I'm done with my homework. A straight A student can't do this, so what if I can't? There's still a lot of time for revision. I'll give marks if I write down the formula. The teacher won't be able to tell if I write vague symbols. I should be able to pass this time. The above illusions were the same when it came to cultivation. This move worked. He was sweating just now. I must have scared him. I can't deal with this person. I couldn't beat him before, but I'm stronger now. This person looks very young and definitely isn't as strong as me. The battle has just begun. I can beat him. Other people might not be able to understand this feeling, but Wang Ling did. He didn't want to be a straight A student, but he also didn't want to be thought of as a slacker. It was the same when it came to cultivation, so Wang Ling didn't know where on earth President Bai's confidence came from. Strong people would never say that they were very strong to other people. This was probably like the straight-A students who slowly walked out of the exam hall and said that they hadn't done well again. There would always be people who naively thought that these straight-A students were going to flunk their exams, but in the end, when they got their exam papers, they were still 50 points ahead of them. President Bai used the Wuxia umbrella's teleportation ability as well as this primordial world separation palm to launch a new round of swift and violent attacks. In the end, the palm actually turned into countless shadows that flickered in front of Wang Ling, but Wang Ling evaded all of them. Blindly dodging is useless. In that moment, President Bai was full of confidence. His attack speed was almost 100% faster than before, and it was still rising. President Bai carefully observed Wang Ling's reaction under these increasingly fierce attacks, but unfortunately didn't notice any change on his face. Apart from the slightly deflated expression at the start of the attack, the other party had a poker face in all of President Bai's subsequent attacks. Could it be that he was scared silly by him? Was he pretending to be calm? President Bai pondered, but in the next moment, a palm directly collided with his, instantly blowing away all of President Bai's thoughts. It was just a casual palm that didn't seem to have used his full strength, but the power of this palm not only cancelled out the spatial power of the primordial world separation palm, it directly sent President Bai flying and causing him to vomit blood on the spot. In the next moment, Wang Ling's indifferent voice sounded in President Bai's mind. Do you have any other moves? If not, I'm going back to do my homework. Chapter 691. The corners of President Bai's mouth twitched as if he was doubting life. It was clear that this youngster hadn't used his full strength in that palm strike just now. But while President Bai had spat out blood, he had almost instantly recovered from his injury, and hadn't even suffered any internal injuries. President Bai had an extremely strong recovery physique to begin with, so he wasn't afraid of being injured at all. But the scene in front of him left him in disbelief. His primordial world-stripping palm, just now was one of the top 3 spells he had mastered. He didn't believe that this spatial spell, which had the power to destroy space, hadn't caused the youngster the slightest bit of damage. How could his palm technique have failed? No. This person was definitely trying to show off. At that moment, President Bai's thoughts were 1,001 things, and he didn't even have time to think about what the youngster's words meant. He was already such a powerful almighty, did he still need to do homework? President Bai instantly felt his mind go haywire. He didn't believe that his move just now hadn't harmed the other party at all. Purely in terms of damage, his palm strike wasn't just fatal, it was also extremely destructive. No matter how strong the other party's recovery ability was, the damage caused by a spatial spell couldn't be completely healed in a short period of time. This was an even more terrifying kind of damage than the serious injury state. Wang Ling's casual palm strike just now hadn't been fatal, but the frightening thing was that Wang Ling had directly offset the damage from his spatial palm technique. President Bai had successfully borrowed money from Night Ghost Spirit Emperor in exchange for his lifespan to raise his strength to the late true immortal level for a short period of time. Although he hadn't used 100% of his strength in that palm strike just now, it wasn't to the extent that it hadn't hurt him at all. The other party was definitely trying to show off. That was right. He had to be trying to show off. He couldn't admit or believe that his attack had actually been ineffective. How could there be someone stronger than a true immortal in this world? Even Immortal Jianghu, who was said to have already attained venerated immortal level, was just a legend. A lot of people had never even met him. President Bai's breathing had unconsciously become rapid. This wasn't because he was tired, but purely because he was nervous. But even in this situation, President Bai still didn't have any intention of admitting defeat. Seeing this, Wang Ling sighed silently. Sometimes, it was indeed very difficult to admit that there was a gap between people. This required a person to have an understanding of their true strength. In other words, whether or not they had a clear idea, it was very clear that President Bai hadn't. Sometimes, people needed to be clear about who they were. Wang Ling looked at President Bai with a profound gaze. He had to admit that compared with his previous opponents, President Bai was indeed a little special. He had actually been able to instantly recover from Wang Ling's not-so-serious palm strike. Even the likes of Evil Sword God and the Old Devil couldn't compare to this kind of self-healing ability. In other words, even if Wang Ling was a little more ruthless, President Bai wouldn't die so easily. He had actually been pretty depressed in his previous fights, because he always felt like his hands and feet were tied when he fought. The law had always been his first choice. In an era of orderly cultivation, if everything was solved by killing, then it could only prove that this era was a failure. Someone had created the rules, so someone had to follow them. To put it bluntly, Wang Ling felt that he was still young, and it definitely wasn't a good thing to have too much blood on his hands. Thinking this, Wang Ling sighed and started to walk toward President Bai step by step. The moment he took the first step, President Bai felt an endless pressure directly weigh down on his shoulders, like empty tide crashing down on him. The aura of the youngster in front of him had completely changed. It was almost like it was doubling. It was just the first step, but President Bai was directly shaken into spitting out a mouthful of blood. How can this be? Under President Bai's boundless astonishment, Wang Ling had already taken the second step. At the same time, the entire internal space of the magic treasure started to fluctuate tremendously. This was an independent world which President Bai had used the power of the Wuxia umbrella to open up, and it was completely separated from the outside world. The entire space was extremely stable. But now, the youngster's second step directly affected the entire space wall. Like dominoes, the endless cracks created a chain effect as the space split open in all directions. A powerful space storm swept up in the fissures, which tore the space to and fro, directly destroying space with just one step. How was this possible? President Bai felt that the situation was completely out of control under the enormous tearing force of the space. In his current state, he was like a clay bodhisattva crossing a river, unable to protect himself. The tearing force of the space was too terrifying, and more cracks appeared around him, tearing at his body. President Bai could only yell at Wang Ling, "Are you crazy? You won't be able to protect yourself if you do this." He couldn't figure out why the youngster would directly use this method of destroying space. In President Bai's view, this was undoubtedly a lose-lose situation. This was an independent space which he had set up with the Wuxia umbrella. If the space directly detonated under this kind of destruction, both of them would be finished. Because at that time, even if he became a pile of minced meat drifting in the space, even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be able to return to his original world. You actually want to use this kind of suicidal method to drag me down with you? President Bai broke out in a cold sweat at Wang Ling's viciousness, and his face couldn't help turning deathly pale. But this wasn't the only thing that astonished him. At that moment, Wang Ling took the third step. At that moment, in this world which had been on the verge of collapse and which had become filled with countless space fissures, the fissures which had appeared around the youngster were actually all repaired. The youngster slowly raised his hand, and the space fissures instantly transformed into thousands of vipers which bit at President Bai. At that moment, President Bai finally realized. This youngster didn't want to perish together with him. Instead, after shattering the space, the youngster wanted to manipulate the space fissures to tear him apart. He was going to die. President Bai felt despair. The moment the thousands of space fissures bit at him like vipers, President Bai reflexively stretched out his hand to block them. But just as he raised his hand, everything in front of him unexpectedly became calm once more. President Bai was stupefied by this method. He could shatter it at will and restore it at will. Was this the youngster's true strength? Do you think it's over just like this? While President Bai was in a daze, Wang Ling spoke telepathically. Then, the youngster unzipped his school uniform jacket and put it away, then gazed at President Bai. President Bai didn't know the meaning of this action, but after the youngster took off his jacket, he actually reached into the sleeves of his short-sleeved shirt, as if he was tearing something apart. Heavenly Eye. President Bai opened his eyes wide enough to see through the youngster's movements. In the end, he actually noticed the talisman seal stuck to the youngster's sleeve. Chapter 692. The moment the talisman seal was lifted, the aura which had been suppressed all this time surged like a geyser. The youngster's aura and temperament completely changed in that moment, and there was an indescribable profundity to it. His small body was only the size of a star in this magic treasure space, but it left an indelible impression on anyone. Wang Ling's short-sleeved school uniform fluttered in the wind, and the three-petaled golden flower appeared in the king's eye again. It was endlessly deep, as if it could pierce through the heavens with one glance, and it struck President Bai squarely in the chest with overwhelming pressure. Wang Ling hadn't even made a single move, but President Bai was already sent flying by this aura and vomited blood. The talisman seal had been suppressing Wang Ling's original strength all along. As someone who had been born with the 3,000 great Dao, when the talisman seal was completely stuck to him, the number of heavenly Dao on Wang Ling's body was in fact limited to 100. Even so, this was already fierce enough. Now that the talisman seal had been lifted, even if it was only half opened, the huge gap between 100 heavenly Dao and 1,500 heavenly Dao left President Bai with a bitter taste in his mouth. All along, President Bai had judged the youngster in front of him by his realm, but now he truly understood. This youngster couldn't be measured by realm at all. Rumor had it that evil sword god comprehending 1 heavenly Dao was already unbelievably heaven-defying, but Wang Ling already had 100 heavenly Dao on him when he was sealed. Now that half of it had been unlocked, the pressure of a total of 1,500 heavenly Dao wasn't just enough to shake the heavens. This was a power that could overturn the entire sky. This youngster was far from someone whom President Bai could shake. President Bai grit his teeth. His first reaction was to retreat. If he braced himself in this situation, that would truly be courting death. Wuxia umbrella. He roared as he called out the Wuxia umbrella's name. Behind him, the small black umbrella hovering in the air immediately started to spin at his call and emitted a black light. Wang Ling, however, had already seen through President Bai's intentions. President Bai was scared. He wanted to use the Wuxia umbrella's power to cut open this space and then escape. But how could it be that easy? Wang Ling's gaze turned to the small black umbrella, and several dozen heavenly Dao in his king's eye imperceptibly crushed it, forming a massive restraining force. President Bai could only watch helplessly as the Wuxia umbrella stopped spinning halfway. Wuxia umbrella. President Bai called out again. However, the Wuxia umbrella did not have any reaction. Wuxia umbrella. He shouted for the third time. In the end, it was the extremely irritated voice of the Wuxia umbrella's artifact spirit that responded to President Bai. Noisy, noisy my ass. Can't you see that I can't move? President Bai. To be honest, this was one of the few times the spirit of the Wuxia umbrella had responded to him. Furthermore, it was with such a nasty attitude. Is there any way to get me out of here? President Bai asked the Wuxia umbrella for help. After a moment of silence, the Wuxia umbrella directly begged Wang Ling for mercy. Big shot, please let me go. I only signed a contract with him. I can break the contract. It doesn't matter. Boss, don't kill me. This person has too many sins on his back. I can be a stain witness for him. Bah. Taint the artifact spirit. As a weapon spirit, the limitless umbrella was clearly frightened by the binding power of the heavenly Daos. It felt as if there were a dozen sharp blades placed on its neck. Therefore, after comprehensive consideration, the Wuxia umbrella artifact spirit felt that begging for mercy was the most appropriate way. Wang Ling, after the Wuxia umbrella finished begging for mercy, it immediately tried to persuade President Bai. Cut the crap, hurry up and kneel down to admit you were wrong. President Bai had never expected the Wuxia umbrella to directly choose to betray him. In fact, even if the Wuxia umbrella didn't have to personally say so, Wang Ling had already planned to take it back. He stretched out his hand, and the Wuxia umbrella directly fell into it. As Wang Ling caressed the umbrella, he pulled out a string of golden runes. President Bai was stunned, because this string of runes was none other than the artifact spirit contract he had signed with the Wuxia umbrella. Now this youngster had actually directly pulled out this contract. After dragging out the entire contract, Wang Ling didn't even bother to look at it, and directly crushed it in his palm, reducing it to dust. Thus, there was no need for the Wuxia umbrella to break the contract from the very beginning, and Wang Ling could directly modify it. Now this Wuxia umbrella had already become an ownerless object. I'll fight you to the death. President Bai gnashed his teeth furiously. He never thought that this youngster would actually humiliate him in this way and steal his magic treasure in front of him. This was no different from stealing his wife right in front of him, and was a huge humiliation. Spirit channeling. 9 Rashomon. President Bai yelled as he quickly made a hand seal and slapped the ground. The 9 ancient giant stone gates were immediately summoned by the spirit link. These 9 stone gates were simple and unadorned, like the doorways of an ancient temple. Their frames were richly ornamented with complex patterns and carved with some kind of rare and unusual beast. With a howl, the head of an evil ghost in the center of the gates abruptly opened its mouth, and a distant and desolate aura washed over the area, which turned into a huge protective shield in front of them. Apart from the Wuxia umbrella, this was the last magic treasure President Bai had in his possession. The 9 gates were extremely oppressive, and this 9 Rashomon had an extremely strong suppressive force. The aura of this youngster in front of him was really too terrifying, so President Bai's first thought was to suppress him. As long as he could suppress the other party, maybe he would still be able to fight. But as it turned out, President Bai had indeed been thinking too much. Now that Wang Ling had already removed half of the talisman seal, no matter how many tricks President Bai had up his sleeve, in the face of the power of 1,500 heavenly Dao, he was just trash among trash. Wang Ling stared at the 9 huge ancient gates and sighed. This sigh abruptly released a wave of air. This was the King's Lament. In a flash, the 9 giant gates and a top-notch first-class holy artifact were directly reduced to dust by this sigh. With a gust of wind, they turned into dust that drifted between heaven and earth. This flashy attack was of no use. In the face of 1,500 heavenly Dao, a mere first-class holy artifact couldn't withstand this kind of pressure at all, and was destroyed on the spot. The 9 gates, along with the artifact spirits inside, were completely annihilated. What kind of method was this? President Bai trembled as he knelt on the ground, his expression absent-minded. Chapter 693. All of this was just an experimental performance for Wang Ling. He wanted this President Bai to recognize the gap in their strength. At that moment, President Bai's eyes were pale as he was completely frightened by the enormous power contained in the youngster. Ever since he had cultivated this special immortal constitution, he had never feared death. But the youngster in front of him had such extraordinary means that he had no choice but to believe that this youngster had hundreds and thousands of ways to kill him. He, Baizhi, who had cultivated for thousands of years, was actually going to be defeated here in the end? President Bai lowered his eyes in fear. The number of heavenly Dao contained in Wang Ling's body shook him to his core, and at the same time, he secretly gritted his teeth as a hint of powerless jealousy quietly welled up in his heart. This was the first time Wang Ling had removed the talisman seal. Although it was only half, the power that had erupted was already strong enough. The reason why this was an experimental performance was because Wang Ling wanted to see if he could precisely control the heavenly Dao at his current level of growth if he released half of his strength. And when he had smashed the 9 doors earlier, Wang Ling had already gotten his answer. Given the current situation, removing the talisman seal was actually a very dangerous act. He had just sighed casually and wanted to cast a spell, but in the end, before he could do so, the 9 doors had been directly smashed by his own sigh. President Bai was very shocked. And so was Wang Ling. Heavenly Dao was a good thing, and there were too many people who pursued it but couldn't get it. But sometimes, having too many heavenly Dao was a real pain in the ass. If it wasn't for the fact that this was a completely isolated space that wouldn't affect the outside world even if it was destroyed, there was no way Wang Ling would have been able to remove the talisman seal so easily. But the damage caused by his inadvertent sigh just now had been a huge blow to President Bai. After a moment of silence, Wang Ling stuck the talisman seal back on. President Bai should now be well aware of the gap in strength between the two of them. Forget 3,000 heavenly Dao, even a blow from 1,500 heavenly Dao would be unbearable for anyone. If the 3,000 heavenly Daos were unleashed at the same time, it was likely that all the cultivators in the world would be completely reduced to miscellaneous cultivators. That King's Lament just now hadn't just destroyed the 9 stacks gate in an instant. President Bai had also been severely injured. Although there weren't any visible wounds on the surface, that sigh had already caused severe internal injuries. His internal organs had probably been shattered in an instant, but President Bai had still survived. Compared with his previous opponents, this President Bai was indeed like a cockroach. But while they were difficult to deal with, it wasn't as if he didn't have the means to deal with them. Wang Ling closed the talisman seal. He felt a little uneasy after releasing half of his strength earlier, so he stuck it back on. It was just an ordinary sigh and it was already so powerful. If it was a spell, what would happen? But this action deeply hurt President Bai, and he felt that he was being looked down upon. President Bai crawled up from the ground on trembling legs and hurriedly popped a spirit-recovering pill into his mouth. The internal injuries caused by the King's Lament had already mostly recovered. But Wang Ling could see that this kind of recovery wasn't limitless, and required a lot of spirit energy. Currently, President Bai's spirit energy was almost at its limit, and he had no choice but to take pills to maintain his strength. Damn it, you actually dare look down on me? Seeing Wang Ling stick the talisman seal back on, President Bai felt like he had suffered an unprecedented psychological blow. This was a blatant disdain. President Bai was so angry that his liver trembled. Even if you're a tiger, I'm going to pull out one of your teeth today. As he spoke, President Bai narrowed his eyes, and in an instant, countless runes of light condensed on his body. In that instant, President Bai's body abruptly swelled up countless times in the air, and his body was covered in runes that were as black as ink. These dark runes hid a godly might that couldn't be profaned, and who knew how much power they contained. Wang Ling could immediately tell that President Bai had once again sold his body for a deal. But this time, it was clear that President Bai wasn't selling his lifespan, but his soul. Exchanging one's lifespan for a replacement was completely different from exchanging one's soul. Wang Ling was astonished and felt that things had become troublesome. He never thought that his unintentional action would actually provoke President Bai to directly resort to selling his soul in exchange for greater power to fight Wang Ling. It wouldn't be to the extent of mutual destruction, but there was a real possibility that his clothes would be torn. The Wang family's family law stipulated that apart from when the school uniform was damaged due to unavoidable circumstances, if Wang Ling had to buy a new school uniform after it was damaged, the money would be deducted from his own pocket money. In that instant, Wang Ling broke out in a cold sweat. Number 60 high school uniform was ugly, but it wasn't cheap. It could sell several boxes of crispy noodle snacks. On the other side, President Bai was pleasantly surprised when he saw Wang Ling's expression change dramatically. Although he didn't know what had caused this initially calm youngster to suddenly look a little flustered, President Bai's first reaction was that the power he had exchanged his soul for was already enough to make this youngster feel apprehensive. Otherwise, there was no way this youngster would show such an expression. "You're scared, aren't you?" In his giant form, President Bai sneered cruelly. He was practically roaring as he shouted, his voice a little wild and unruly as it reverberated in the world. Wang Ling, seeing that the youngster didn't respond, President Bai's smile became even more brilliant. "Sure enough, you're scared. You finally know fear." Wang Ling, at that moment, President Bai's body was hundreds of times larger than before as he stared at Wang Ling in a condescending manner. "I used my soul in exchange for the power of heavenly Tao multiplication. No matter what, I'll make you taste some pain with this strike." As soon as he said this, President Bai's giant form actually transformed once again, and he actually turned into a giant pitch-black spear. The strong wind that rose in all directions really created a lot of space fissures, stirring up a massive storm that messed up Wang Ling's bangs. Wang Ling stared blankly for a long time as he stared blankly, unable to see what on earth was so powerful about him. Go to hell. President Bai, who had transformed into a giant spear, was already charging at Wang Ling at an extremely fast speed with absolutely destructive power. "Sword, come." Wang Ling curled his lip and stretched out his hand. Chapter 694. This black spear was called the Spear of Destiny. President Bai had paid the price of his soul and used his body as a medium to transform into this spear. And this wasn't just President Bai's most powerful strike, it was also his last. Because he had sold his soul, after this spear was over, President Bai's soul would be directly absorbed by Night Ghost Spirit Emperor and he would become his puppet. Borrowing from a loan shark was fraught with danger to begin with. But when President Bai charged forward, Wang Ling threw Jianghu at him at the same time. Compared with the Spear of Destiny's enormous body, the brown spirit light which Jianghu had turned into was like a tiny spark. It looked so insignificant, but its battle strength was astonishing. When the brown spirit light approached the Spear of Destiny, which President Bai had transformed into, he couldn't help shuddering at the feeling of being within arm's reach. He was going to die. This was President Bai's first instinct. He sensed unprecedented killing intent from this brown spirit light. After all, this was already his final trump card. He had been smug about teaching the youngster a lesson, but in the end he was going to end up in a sorry state. He bid farewell to the world in the most tragic way possible. Perhaps he wouldn't die, but his soul would be sold to Night Ghost Spirit Emperor forever and he would become his soul's slave. This was an outcome even more tragic than death. It was over. Wang Ling stared at President Bai without saying a word or even speaking telepathically. But the moment he collided with Jianghu, President Bai indeed read the meaning in the youngster's dead fish eyes. This battle was already over. In those final few seconds when Jianghu collided with him, President Bai saw the initially weak brown spirit light suddenly expand to form a massive sword of light which came crashing down at him. When the sword drew closer, President Bai heard countless voices in his ears. These voices were solemn and sacred, and carried with them an enormous pressure that could destroy the world, making his heart tremble. In the final moment of collision, President Bai's eyes abruptly widened and his face was full of despair. World-annihilating sword, the most profound sword technique of heavenly Tao, Sword Tao. In the final moment before his death, President Bai's mind seemed to clear up all of a sudden. At the same time, he actually felt a sense of peace that he had never felt before. In front of the world-annihilating sword, he hadn't felt the slightest bit of fear, because he knew that he wouldn't feel any pain when this sword came down. The moment they collided, the entire space within the magic treasure shattered, and an intense rumbling sound erupted. Wang Ling activated the golden light shield to its fullest extent, for fear that his school uniform would be ruined. Elsewhere, in Night Chief's secret base in Mishio Nation. At the same time, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor learned of President Bai's death. In the end, he still lost? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor stared at the soul crystal ball in his hand and watched as President Bai's soul mark gradually faded. The second president, Dylan, stood aside. Lord Spiritual Venerable, may I ask how strong they are? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor frowned, then shook his head after a while and said indifferently, immeasurable. It is. Baizha isn't completely dead. He sold his soul to me, but now that I've taken it back, it's just a remnant soul. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor muttered to himself. He opened his right hand, and a ball of blue soul light instantly appeared in his palm. This was the soul which President Bai had sold to him, but it was now completely broken. A broken soul, is it still useful? Whether it's a remnant soul or not, as long as there's a wisp of it left, it's still useful to me. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor smiled slightly, then opened his purple lips and directly absorbed this remnant soul of President Bai's. The moment he finished absorbing the remnant soul, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor also absorbed President Bai's abilities from when he was alive. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor opened his right shoulder, where Wang Ling's medicine ball had pierced through previously. Back then, the medicine ball had flown around the earth and directly blown his arm off. Even though it had been repaired, there was still a scar where it connected. But after absorbing President Bai's remnant soul, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor also obtained President Bai's extremely strong regenerative abilities, and the wound actually instantly became smooth and flat as it healed. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's strength was to turn someone else's abilities into his own. Looking at this scene, Second Chief Dylan trembled with fear. After absorbing President Bai's remnant soul, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor seemed a little unsatisfied, and he leaned back in his chair for a long time before he asked languidly, By the way, how's the contact going? President Dylan replied, I've already taken over the Demon Hunters Association's work, and I'll set out for Huaxiao Nation starting today. Good. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor nodded. Also, I'll leave the matter of collecting the souls of the Demon Hunters Association's elite group to you. Especially Ji Xing's and Yaren's souls, it would be best if you could bring them back in one piece. Then what about the youngster who fought President Bai? Asked Dylan. That youngster? If we can eat that youngster's soul, that would truly be wonderful. From President Bai's remnant soul, he could sense how powerful that youngster was, and the more powerful a person was, the more delicious their soul would be. At this thought, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor couldn't help drooling. Dylan. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor wiped at his drool. Sorry, I forgot myself. Dylan, Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, we must be careful when dealing with that youngster. If we don't take care of him, he'll definitely become a huge problem for our Night Chief in the future. Then what is Lord Spirit Emperor's opinion? No matter how powerful a person is, they will still have weaknesses. The root cause of Baizha's defeat this time was that he didn't poke the other party where it hurts. Number 60 high is a little strange to begin with. If we act rashly without fully understanding the other party's background, we definitely won't end well. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor smiled. My venerable self has some information I bought from Immortal Castle. According to the information, this youngster seems to have an older brother, and the two brothers seem to be on good terms. The point is that this older brother isn't a cultivator. My venerable self thinks that this can be a breakthrough for us. After you arrive in Huaxiao Nation, apart from keeping a close eye on the master plan, you can also assign someone to investigate this person. Yes, Lord Spirit Emperor. That youngster's soul is a little delicious. If we can threaten him this time and make him willingly trade his soul with us, that would be great. Lord Spirit Emperor, your saliva? Oh, sorry, my venerable self forgot myself again. Chapter 695. When Wang Ling opened his eyes again, it was already evening and several spotlights shone on his head. He reappeared at number 60 High School's gate. The place where the space fisher had appeared earlier had already been sealed off by the police with layers of seals and barriers. Several police officers who were inspecting the barrier were startled when they saw this scene. No one had expected this student who had been swallowed up by the space fissure would actually be sent back untouched. It wasn't just the police, even Wang Ling himself was a little bewildered. Wang Ling hadn't expected that he would be spat out in the same place as he had been swallowed, which led to the surrounding police officers staring at him as if they were looking at a rare animal. What's going on? Didn't they say that the student had already been swallowed? The police officers scratched their heads. They had worked overtime for nothing tonight. After being spat out of the space, what came next was naturally the police's statement and all kinds of questions. The whole matter actually wasn't too troublesome, since President Bai was already dead and had offered up his soul. Apart from Wang Ling, there were no other witnesses, so Wang Ling could say whatever he wanted. It was just that this time Wang Ling didn't push everything onto Audiobook. At this stage, it was clear that there was an even more powerful expert pulling the strings behind this President Bai, and this expert was the head of the Foreign Force Night Chief. At this stage, Wang Ling didn't really want his disciple to take the blame for what had happened abroad, otherwise it would really be a little too much. It was already midnight when Wang Ling returned home that night. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal personally drove him back to the Wang family's small villa. Standing at the entrance to the villa, it was completely silent. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's car stopped in front of the villa for a while. He thought that the seniors in the villa would come out to pick him up, but in the end no one came out for a long time, and his expression was a little awkward. Brother Ling, it seems that the seniors are already resting. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Grenade-throwing, this fake father cared more about him than his own parents. Brother Ling, rest early. Brother Zhua and I will be in charge of handling the police station from now on. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal often came into contact with the police station because they courted death all year round, so he was quite familiar with handling all kinds of cases. President Bai's body had been destroyed along with the space, and Wang Ling deduced that his soul had probably been absorbed by Night Ghost Spirit Emperor in the form of a remnant soul. Of course, Wang Ling himself was well aware of this, but he hadn't completely explained it to the police. Because if he said everything, he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. His current identity was still that of a student, and the most important thing he had to face was the upcoming final exam. If he were to confess everything to the police, the fact that he had great power would definitely be exposed. What's more, after today's incident, he had already received a lot of attention. Wang Ling sighed. His initial goal had just been to be invisible, but now that things had developed to this point, it was a little difficult for him to keep a low profile. Wang Ling felt that when he had directly obtained an SSR in the entrance test at the start of the semester, it had caused a lot of talk. It hadn't been easy for things to calm down recently, but in the end, the focus of attention had shifted back to him. When he got out of the car, Wang Ling gave the Wuxia umbrella which he had taken from President Bai to Grenade-throwing for Little Silver to handle. Wuxia umbrella, Big Brother, Thunder Monkey. Big Brother, please take care of me in the future. We'll be one big family from now on. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Grenade-throwing knew about the Wuxia umbrella being taken back. Because Grenade-throwing would be responsible for handling a lot of the follow-up matters, he had directly passed on the memories of his and President Bai's fight in the space to Grenade-throwing, so Grenade-throwing was the clearest about the entire sequence of events. The moment he took the black umbrella, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help sighing again. As expected, Brother Ling is still the best. He was actually able to directly erase a Magic Treasures contract. This method was too monstrous. In some sense, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal even felt that Wang Ling was like a game administrator. He had directly used his identity as an administrator to unbind a prop. But holding the Wuxia umbrella in his hand, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression was a little worried. It was very obvious from the way the Wuxia umbrella had spoken just now that it wasn't a proper umbrella. The most important thing was that after its contract had been erased, this Wuxia umbrella was currently ownerless. If something unexpected happened on the way back, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that it would be very difficult for him to suppress it with his own strength. As a magic treasure with its own uniqueness, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help overthinking things. The reason why this Wuxia umbrella was so well behaved now was because Wang Ling was here. Who knew if it would still behave when Wang Ling wasn't around? Just as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was thinking this, he saw Wang Ling suddenly grab his hand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Ling, isn't this a little too fast? I'm not ready yet, Wang Ling. What was this guy thinking now? At that moment, Wang Ling stared at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and said something telepathically, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's face instantly lit up with realization. It was as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had predicted. On the way back with the Wuxia umbrella which had been lying in the passenger seat suddenly moved slightly, and then it directly floated up into the air, projecting a shadow. This shadow was the human form of the Wuxia umbrella's weapon spirit. It was a purple-haired girl with long pointy ears and a face covered in bandages. Her name was Wuxia. Was that big shot just now your friend? The Wuxia umbrella's weapon spirit asked. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his eyebrows. What about it? His intuition was telling him that this Wuxia umbrella was most likely up to some tricks. Sure enough, as long as Brother Ling wasn't by its side, this umbrella would indeed cause trouble. Fortunately, everything was within grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expectations. When Wang Ling had grabbed his hand just now, he had in fact stored a spell in his soul suppression ring. Although the soul suppression ring was a resurrection magic artifact, it also had a spatial storage function, and could also be used to store spells. It seems you're only at the soul formation stage? The girl asked in a deep voice again. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. What do you mean? Are you looking down on soul formation cultivators? The young girl smiled sinisterly. No, I was just thinking if you'd better have designs on me and use me as a hostage to threaten Brother Ling. You could tell? The girl was startled. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the steering wheel with a calm expression on his face. Do you know why Brother Ling touched my hand just now? The girl shook her head. He stored 10 flames of purification in my ring, and told me that if you didn't behave, he would directly burn you. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stared at her with a smile. If you don't believe me, let's try it? The girl, you actually calculated this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? Do you still want to make a move? The girl smiled slightly and then patted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the shoulder. Ha ha ha. I was just joking just now. Aren't we one big family? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. Chapter 696. The Demon Hunters Association incident finally ended with President Bai blowing himself up, but that was just an explanation to the general public. Anyone who had been personally involved in the incident knew that the Demon Hunters Association was just the beginning, and it wouldn't be over until the head of the foreign force was caught. The next day was July 26th on Wednesday in the 14th week of the semester. News of President Bai blowing himself up spread all over the internet. Under pressure from Secretary Da Kong of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, all the major media outlets hid Wang Ling's information and didn't let the students know. It was the Alliance of 10,000 Schools' responsibility to protect students' privacy. Of course, Audiobook had also requested this, otherwise it wouldn't have been so convenient. Early in the morning in elegant little pavilion, General Yi and his assistant, Tang Qin, were sipping tea as they read the morning's morning newspaper. The crisis was resolved just like that? Is that student really all right? Old Tang was a little puzzled. He felt that this matter was very complicated, and there seemed to be too many doubtful points that hadn't been clearly explained. Based on what I know so far, there are indeed a lot of things that haven't been reported. I asked Di Shaokong in private. This guy wouldn't tell me even half a word. General Yi's brow furrowed into a knot. Number 60 High had been in trouble time and time again, but in the end they had all been averted. Furthermore, Audiobook of the General Administration of 100 Schools, who had recently been in the limelight, had been involved in almost every incident. This person was a number 60 High graduate who had become famous after accidentally killing a demon king a few years ago. Recently he had been rising up the ranks like a rocket, and had long attracted General Yi's attention. General Yi put down the newspaper and stared at Old Tang. It seems that what you're thinking is pretty much the same as what I'm deducing. Old Tang nodded. I think that there's definitely someone pulling the strings behind the scenes and that this person is very powerful. Da Kong has never mentioned this matter. Sure enough, what I'm most worried about is about to happen. General Yi sighed. What he was afraid of was this. In recent years, the fight against corruption had become more and more prevalent, and almost no one dared to commit crimes. But if any of the 10 generals were corrupted, it would be a heavy blow to Huaxiao nation. Old Tang, General Yi suspects. General Yi hurriedly stopped him. I do, but we don't have any evidence at the moment, so we can't speak carelessly. In fact, General Yi had already had his suspicions a long time ago, and now it seemed that the whole thing was finally starting to take shape. He was well aware that asking Sun Dakong directly wouldn't yield any results, so in the end if he wanted to investigate, he would have to start with number 60 Hai and Odd Zhua. This was indeed what General Yi had been thinking before the Demon Hunters Association incident came to an end. But now General Yi had a new plan. He decided to visit the home of the student involved in the incident. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but General Yi felt that there was something fishy about this. Furthermore, General Yi had a strong feeling that the almighty behind Director Zhuo he would definitely get the answer on this trip. It seems that General Yi has made up his mind. Seeing General Yi's righteous expression, Old Tang chuckled. I hope that the outcome of this matter won't be too bad. Dakong and I have worked together for thousands of years. Logically speaking, he shouldn't do anything foolish. But if there's something wrong with Dakong, this old man will use all his strength to take him down. Speaking up to this point, General Yi's eyes flickered. Whether it's official or private, this is the best way to deal with it. General, do you need me to make preparations? Old Tang asked. General Yi waved his hand. Not for the time being. The summer camp in Beast King's remains in Songhai City is about to start, and this old man has to make a trip there anyway. I also have to visit that stupid junior brother of mine on the way. But before that, this old man intends to clarify some things first. On the other side, number 60 High was particularly noisy this morning. Grade 1 Class 3's focus this morning was naturally Wang Ling, who had survived a disaster. Wang Ling came especially early this morning. When he arrived at school, only a few of his classmates were busy cleaning up. Little Peanut went out with a few bouquets of flowers in his hands, and was about to dispose of them. The other students of number 60 High School had bought these flowers from the flower shop after hearing about the news of Wang Ling's accident after school yesterday. The labels on the flowers even read, "In deep mourning for classmate Wang Ling." Wang Ling. Holding the flowers, Little Peanut bumped into Wang Ling as soon as he left the classroom, and immediately cried out in alarm, "Oh my God! Classmate Wang Ling is alive." Wang Ling. Although there had already been news yesterday that Wang Ling was still alive and well, Little Peanut still felt a little frightened when he saw him again. The class cadres who had come to clean the classroom early this morning had also officially received Teacher Pan's notice, and the fragrance of flowers still filled the air in the classroom. When Wang Ling walked into the classroom, he saw that there were actually wreaths piled on his seat. Classmate Wang Ling, wait. Let me confirm it first. Little Peanut stretched out his hand and poked Wang Ling's face. Although he had the same poker face and dead fish eyes as always, at least there was warmth on his face. It seemed that this was indeed classmate Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, it's great that you're still alive. Everyone was so worried. Quite a few girls cried yesterday. Little Peanut said. Wang Ling listened to Little Peanut talk about the reactions of the other people in class when he and President Bai had fought yesterday. Among the girls, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin were the saddest. In contrast, the boys were more stable and most of them were silent. Super Chen was the only one who acted like nothing had happened, because he felt that Wang Ling would be fine. Yesterday, Little Peanut had thought that Super Chen was cold-blooded, but now it seemed that Super Chen's mouth was indeed a little fierce. As they were chatting, Dopey Gua and Super Chen also came into class. The moment they saw Wang Ling, they were startled. Dopey Gua, yo. Wang Ling, you're still alive. Wang Ling, I've really let you down, huh? Dopey Gua, will you reimburse me for the wreaths I bought yesterday? Wang Ling, this was purely a joke, so Wang Ling's expression didn't change at all. Super Chen slapped his thigh. Look, what did I say? I said Wang Ling would be fine. This is the mascot of our class. How could he be fine? Wang Ling, did you see the news this morning? I heard that President Bai blew himself up in the space and nothing was left of him. Super Chen laughed. Look, Wang Ling survived a disaster. Not only did he escape a calamity, he was captured by President Bai and even made himself self-destruct. If it wasn't for the fact that Wang Ling went to high school with us, I would have suspected that he was the protagonist. Is there a definite connection between the two? Little Peanut asked doubtfully. Super Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Which protagonist would choose to study in an ordinary high school? Otherwise, there must be something wrong with their brains. Chapter 697. This morning was destined to be anything but tranquil. Wang Ling's unscathed return became the talk of the entire number 60 high school, and directly cemented his status as a mascot. Wang Ling heard a lot of things. People were always animals that only knew how to cherish things after they had lost them. Although Wang Ling had always been trying his best to keep a low profile and to erase his existence, when they heard the bad news about him yesterday, all the alumni of number 60 high school, whether they knew or didn't know him, felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in their throats. The girls in the class were usually carefree, but because of this matter yesterday, they were all wiping their tears sadly. The person who surprised Wang Ling the most was Teacher Pan. Old Pan had asked for leave from work today. It was said that she had cried herself hoarse yesterday and was in an extremely bad state of mind, so she had no choice but to ask Director Sher for leave. The scariest thing was always a mental blow. In all her years of teaching, Old Pan had never seen her students meet with an accident, so she had suffered a very serious psychological blow after hearing this. In class, there were times when she would be a little violent with her classmates because of their studies, but in Old Pan's eyes, every student was actually like her child. Wang Ling had always felt that this was just a polite greeting, so after learning today that Old Pan had asked for leave and the reason for it, Wang Ling's heart sank. When he had acted yesterday, he should have been more thoughtful. For example, if he had left a clone at school, the problem might not have developed to this extent. But at that time, Wang Ling had sensed President Bai's murderous intent in the classroom, and hadn't had time to think about it before he had walked out of the school gate to meet the challenge. Because if he had been one step later, the space trap hidden at the school gate would have definitely sucked in the other students. This had been an unexpected accident, and it was very obvious that President Bai had made this decision on the spur of the moment, since his eyelid warning hadn't alerted Wang Ling in advance. Sometimes, it was really hard to guard against impromptu actions like this. But as the saying went, once bitten, twice shy. After this crisis experience, Wang Ling felt that if he ran into trouble again in the future, he would be a lot more familiar with it. Wait a minute. Why did he say again? Not long after Wang Ling had left for school this morning, a guest came to the Wang family's small villa. A middle-aged uncle with a righteous face and a sturdy figure in a well-ironed suit drove up to the entrance of the villa. "Pick me up in the evening," the middle-aged man said to the driver. "Yes, my lord." The driver nodded and drove away after the middle-aged man got out of the car. Because it was not his first time here, the driver was already familiar with the nearby roads. The closest restaurant to the villa was Midnight Dining Hall. Although Boss Tan hadn't officially opened for business yet and only offered some newly released summer snacks, it was more than enough time to polish it. This was a frequent guest of the Wang family's small villa, but Wang Ling had never seen him before because every time this uncle came over, it was always on a working day. Inside the villa, Nurse Wang heard the noise at the door and hurried to open the door. "Welcome, sir. Please come in." This was an important person and he couldn't be neglected. When the middle-aged man entered the door, Mother Wang took out a pair of slippers from the shoe cabinet, which was specially prepared for him. "Brother Situ, are you still writing something upstairs?" the middle-aged man asked after changing into his slippers. "Yes, I've written quite a lot today." "Nice. There's a new chapter to read." The middle-aged man smiled like a child. "Mother Wang, what does Madam want to eat for lunch?" "I'm fine with anything. I'm not here for food. But it's best not to make broccoli. I realize that every time I come here there's broccoli, it's a little boring," the middle-aged man said. Mother Wang, "Very well, madam." Elsewhere, General Yi, who had already made up his mind to come to the Wang family's small villa to find out what was going on, was in the midst of making preparations. Thus, it was very important to find an appropriate excuse. As soon as General Yi arrived in Songhai City, arrangements had already been made for his old subordinates. In fact, it wasn't just Songhai City. General Yi's old subordinates were spread throughout every province in Huaxiao Nation. Before General Yi had retired as a cultivator, all the sword cultivators in Huaxiao Nation had to listen to his commands. All the sword cultivators were part of the special police. Now that General Yi had retired as a cultivator, his old subordinates had all become leading cadres. Thus, even though General Yi had already retired as a cultivator, these current leading cadres still maintained 100% respect for his old leaders. Logically speaking, visiting the parents of a student who was the focus of the news should have been reported to the education department, but General Yi didn't want to alarm the alliance of 10,000 schools this time, so the whole thing was carried out in secret. "Everything is ready? What name are we going under this time?" General Yi sat in his office in Songhai City Police Station as he browsed through the news on Wang Ling. He had wanted to look up personal information on this student Wang Ling, but in the end realized that there was pitifully little information on Wang Ling in the newspapers, and there wasn't even a photo of him, whether it was in the newspapers or online. In general, he was now becoming more and more curious about this matter. Who on earth was pulling the strings behind the scenes? Yes, teacher, everything has been arranged. We'll go under the name of the Poverty Relief Foundation. A department-level cadre stood respectfully in front of General E. This was the head of the police department. Many police officers who passed by the office door looked at him through the window with astonished expressions. It was said that everything had its vanquisher. No one thought that the usually hot-tempered head would actually have such a well-behaved side. The Poverty Relief Foundation? That's right. This student previously received a poverty relief program jointly launched by Number 60 High and the General Administration of 100 schools. What does this child want? Energy-gathering pills? Foundation establishment pills? Or spirit-gathering pills? Or money? General E nodded as he continued to ask questions. In one breath, he listed the names of several kinds of elixirs which were commonly used by foundation establishment cultivators to speed up their cultivation. No matter what this child wants, since we're going under the name of the Poverty Relief Foundation this time, we can't go empty-handed. No matter what we've helped before, we're going to double it this time, General E said very seriously. In the end, the head shook his head. No, teacher, this student wants crispy noodle snacks. Hearing this, General E was blank as he suddenly felt a little old and muddle-headed. Crispy noodle snacks. Chapter 698. This wasn't the head of state's first visit to the villa, but he had no idea at all about Wang Ling. Wang Ling's bedroom was right across from Father Wang's study, but the head of state had never gone in. But the head of state had seen the photo before. The only decoded photo of Wang Ling was stored in a drawer in Father Wang's study. Even if he hadn't seen Wang Ling in person, the great shielding spell wouldn't turn this photo into a mosaic. This photo was specially prepared for the head of state. During the period when the head of state was here, all the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa would enter a dormant state to avoid being discovered by the head of state. From the photo, this was indeed an ordinary high school student with a mediocre appearance. This was the head of state's first impression after seeing Wang Ling's photo. When they reached the study, the head of state directly sat down in the chair next to Father Wang. This chair had originally been reserved for Lai Mingming, but he hadn't come today. Of course, Lai Mingming had no idea that he had been sitting in the same chair as the head of state all this time. In Father Wang's eyes, this chair was now very valuable. The head of state could increase the retail price of a vegetable bun by several times just by eating it. He launched the head of state's bun set meal, and this chair was even more of a treasure among treasures. There were now many identical chairs in the villa's basement which had all been used by the head of state. Every time the head of state came, Father Wang would send him a new one to replace it. Brother Situ? Is little Wang Ling all right? Not long after they sat down, Princeps asked directly, if you have any difficulties you must tell me. I can find someone to make arrangements. What arrangements? For example, a psychiatrist? Do you know Minister Luo? Princeps said. Father Wang immediately broke out in a sweat. How could he not know Minister Luo? He was one of the 10 founding generals, and also a medical saint. There's no need. Father Wang laughed and scratched the back of his head. Thank you for your concern, Your Excellency. He's in a good mood now and went to school this morning. Is that so? It looked like little Wang Ling was in a good mood. His ability to withstand pressure is very strong. The head of state also laughed. Nowadays, young people need to be able to withstand pressure to be successful. It looks like little Wang Ling's future is limitless. Your Excellency is too kind. His results are just SOSO. Also, when will there be a verdict on the singer who stole your song? To Father Wang's surprise, he realized that the head of state took this matter very seriously. In fact, Princeps had sent him a private message to ask him about it. Previously, Princeps had been infuriated by a musician named Li Yuanjia. He could copy the melodies of several songs into one song. There's no need to rush. Right now we're boiling a frog in warm water. We're planning to slowly boil it to death. Now there are fans who regularly go to his live broadcast room to blow up and expose his actions. Yeah, you'll have to pay for what you've done sooner or later. The head Yuan nodded. As for domestic affairs, as long as they don't violate the laws and ethics and don't go beyond the rules, I can help Brother Situ arrange everything clearly. At this point, Princeps gave a thumbs up and grinned. All right? Father Wang looked overwhelmed by the favor. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was good to have Princeps as a fan. He just needed to arrange everything. Around lunchtime today, Father Wang and the head of state were eating in the living room, and Mother Wang had cooked a table full of home-cooked dishes. The Wang family's villa received a call from the Poverty Relief Foundation. On the other end of the line, the customer service lady said in a sweet voice, "Excuse me, is this classmate Wang Ling's parent?" Mother Wang, "Yes, what's the matter?" "It's like this. We found out that a month ago, classmate Wang Ling accepted our poverty relief and asked for crispy noodle snacks. Mother Wang, classmate Wang Ling has been in danger recently, and the leader of our Peace Relief Foundation has attached great importance to it, and plans to pay him a personal visit to express our condolences. In passing, we'll give him twice as much crispy noodle snacks." Saying this, the customer service lady couldn't help dropping her forehead into her hand. What kind of freakish aid resource was this? Mother Wang, then when will the leader be coming? Wait a minute, let me check the time. Actually, Mother Wang was at a loss when she heard this. She knew about the Poverty Relief Foundation, but she never expected it to call at this time, and even more so for it to attract the attention of the leader, who was planning to pay a visit. After all, they had indeed given them aid resources before, and Mother Wang felt that it wouldn't be good to directly refuse them. "Is this afternoon convenient?" "So soon?" Mother Wang was startled. After hanging up, Father Wang raised his head and asked, "Who was it?" "It's from the Poverty Relief Foundation. They said that a leader will be coming to our house this afternoon. Have you confirmed his identity? Could he be a swindler?" Father Wang frowned. "This is a government agency. If someone dares to pretend to be one, I'll definitely make arrangements for them." The head of state laughed. Father Wang and Mother Wang. At noon, General Yi personally went to the Wang family's small villa with the supplies. He had a strong feeling that the person behind the scenes was in this villa. Before he even got close, he could already sense an unusual aura in the villa. The supply truck carrying the crispy noodle snacks followed closely behind General Yi's car. In the front passenger seat, General Yi looked ahead and probed with his spiritual senses. He was 100% sure that there was an expert in this villa. Furthermore, this expert was no weaker than him and might even be stronger than him. Who on earth was it? General Yi acknowledged that he definitely wasn't the strongest in Wuxia Nation, but his overall combat strength could be ranked in the top 10, and there were only a handful of people who could surpass him. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that there were some cultivation experts behind the scenes whom he didn't know about. Finally, was everything going to come to light? General Yi narrowed his eyes. He was full of curiosity about the identity of the person in the villa. As they approached the Wang family's small villa, General Yi instructed the driver, "Stop the car, I'll go take a look first." He had the driver park his car 50 meters away from the villa, then got out. The moment he opened the car door, General Yi straightaway put his hands behind his back and floated over. "Let me see who on earth you are." General Yi floated in front of the Wang family's small villa, and then directly probed it with his spiritual senses. Although this was a test, the collision of spiritual senses was the most direct way for cultivators to test each other. It was like comparing the strength of a handshake when two people met and shook hands. It could directly reflect some of the basic strength of a cultivator. Inside the villa, the head of state was engrossed in reading Father Wang's draft, when he suddenly felt a chill on his back. This was the feeling of a spiritual sense probe. The head of state was startled. Someone was actually probing this place? Chapter 699. The feeling of being secretly observed immediately put the head of state on high alert, and Father Wang noticed that there was something wrong with the head of state's expression. "Someone's at the door." The head of state noted down his current reading progress, then got up and looked out the window. He had been reading happily, so he was a little unhappy to be disturbed. Could it be someone from the foundation? Father Wang remembered that he seemed to have heard the sound of a car passing by just now. The Wang family's small villa was located on East Huang Road in the suburbs, which was usually sparsely populated, so the sound of a car passing by could be heard very clearly. "I'm not sure at the moment, but I'm going to meet them." The head of state frowned. Even if it was someone from the foundation who would come knocking on their door and sound them out like this. Then, Father Wang opened his mouth, and subconsciously felt that the head of state was going to make arrangements again. The head of state stared at him solemnly. "Brother Situ, sit here and don't move. Write a little more while I'm making arrangements." Father Wang. At the door, General Yi frowned deeply after his probing, because he felt that his spiritual senses had been broken down. The expert in the villa had clearly sensed that he was probing and had made a move to break down his spying. It was very obvious that this was an extremely powerful expert. General E carefully observed the villa's location. As far as he knew, this road was quite remote, and when it came to feng shui, it was actually just average. What kind of expert would choose to live in seclusion in such a remote place? Everything was too illogical. General E felt that he had to figure out a few things right now. 1. The relationship between this mysterious expert and Zhua and Secretary Sun Dakong of the General Administration of 100 Schools. 2. The identity and strength of this mysterious expert. 3. What was this mysterious expert's real purpose? Considering the increasingly active foreign forces recently, General E even started to suspect that this mysterious expert was an expert from outside the country. The thing that General E had always been most afraid of and secretly guarded against was collusion between high-ranking Huaxiao Alliance higher-ups and foreign forces. But now he had finally caught a clue. There was a mole. And the deal. It turned out that there would come a day when he would shout out a slogan. At that moment, General E thought of a classic line. There were definitely spies sent by foreign forces in Huaxiao Nation, and there were even quite a number of middle-level cadres who had already been bribed to become traitors. General E had gathered a lot of evidence over the years. Most of the high-ranking officials who had fallen from grace in recent years were related to this. However, the ranks of those officers were too low. They were not enough. Thus, General E had always wanted to use his remaining energy to catch a big fish during his retirement years. It was obvious that the mysterious expert in this villa was a big fish. Just as General E was feeling excited, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. Several seconds later, he appeared in an incomparably scorching scene. There were volcanoes all around him, and they were on the verge of erupting at any moment. Blazing flames scorched the ground, and there were actually 9 suns in the sky. Real heat. An intrinsic spirit field? General E narrowed his eyes as he floated in the air, his exercise clothes fluttering in the heat waves. The instantaneous activation of the intrinsic spirit field was enough to prove how powerful the person in this villa was. And most importantly, although this person had dragged him into the intrinsic spirit field, he himself hadn't entered the intrinsic spirit field. There were very few people in the world who could separate the intrinsic spirit field from the outside world. It seemed that this was a troublesome enemy. General E calmly analyzed the situation. Even though he had been caught off guard and was at a disadvantage, he still didn't panic in the slightest. He stretched out his hand, and an incorporeal golden wheel of light instantly appeared in his right hand as he pulled out a threatening azure ice sword. The moment this ice sword was pulled out, the originally boiling hot ground was instantly covered in frost, with General E at its center, and it gradually began to spread. Not only that, even General Yi's attire changed. General E, who had been wearing exercise clothes, was instantly draped in a layer of black ice armor, looking like an ancient swordsman. On the other side, in the Wang family's small villa, the head of state used a projection spell to project an image of the intrinsic spirit field into the study. It's been several hundred years, but this kid hasn't made any progress at all. The head of state smiled slightly and explained to Father Wang, "Brother Situ, do you see little E's golden wheel of light? This is his Wuji sword vault, which contains his collection of tens of thousands of magic swords." Father Wang's eyes widened. This battle scene was like watching a blockbuster. This Wuji sword vault can automatically lock onto the most suitable magic sword to use based on little E's current situation. Furthermore, these magic swords are a set with the holy armor, and each sword has its own independent armor, said the head of state. Father Wang had actually thought about asking Wang Ling to provide some reference elements for combat for him to write about in his novel. But he was worried that Wang Ling wouldn't be able to control his strength and would mess things up. Furthermore, it was very risky for Wang Ling to fight in the first place, so Father Wang had basically collected battle materials from movies and TV dramas all this time. But there was a drawback to this. In the end, movies were a lot of fiction, and it definitely wouldn't be as shocking as seeing it for yourself. So in that moment, when Father Wang saw this scene, he actually felt as if his brain's conception and governing vessels had been opened up. This was obviously a sign of a burst of inspiration. The head of state had seen this scene before. But most of the time, Father Wang would only experience this burst of inspiration when he smoked a cigar. Thus, the head of state would send Father Wang cigars every month. But in recent months, just smoking cigars didn't seem to work anymore, and Father Wang had been looking for new ways to help him gain inspiration. Previously, Father Wang had been obsessed with the toilet for a while, but had given up because he got hemorrhoids after sitting for too long. Now, the head of state's eyes instantly lit up when he saw this scene. Brother Situ inspiration? Yes. Father Wang nodded solemnly. What Your Excellency is watching now happens to be a fight scene, and I've been thinking about how to write it. If possible, I hope to have more battle materials. Good. Leave it to me. The head of state nodded. Didn't he just want to watch a fight scene? Wasn't that simple? Chapter 700. Even though Father Wang had a wealth of writing experience, he wasn't perfect. He had always felt that battle scenes were his shortcoming, because he had never had particularly direct combat material. Thus, this was a rare opportunity for Father Wang to collect some reliable material to enrich his writing. What a troublesome guy. General Yi frowned after summoning the Cold Frost Sword from the Wuxia sword repository and donning the Cold Frost armor. The Cold Frost Sword was currently the most suitable magic sword to restrain this scorching field, but he knew that he wouldn't be able to rely on it alone for too long. The other party was stronger than him, and General Yi could directly sense that the temperature of the field was still rising, so he had to break it as soon as possible. Even if I have to stake my name as Blade Master, I have to cut this field open. General Yi took a deep breath and poured endless spirit energy into the Cold Frost Sword in his hand. In a split second, a vast expanse of ice fog spread out, and surging cold air covered half the field. Father Wang stared at this scene in amazement, and then saw the cold air that had spread out in all directions actually start to condense again, swiftly converging into an ice-blue sword light which slashed through the air. The sword light pierced the sky and cut through space as easily as cutting through tofu. The Cold Frost Sword cut open the space of the intrinsic spirit field without the slightest bit of effort. Father Wang clicked his tongue in amazement at this scene. As expected of General Yi, putting Wang Ling aside, Father Wang remembered that according to this year's latest ranking list of Wuxia cultivators' combat strength, General Yi's overall combat strength was in the top 10. Did you think it was over just like that? The head of state chuckled. Father Wang stared at the broadcast with a puzzled expression. General Yi's sword strike just now had indeed broken open the intrinsic spirit field. Judging from the smile on General Yi's face, it was clear that he was extremely confident in his sword strike just now. But in the next moment, General Yi's expression gradually paled, because he realized that he was still inside the intrinsic spirit field. And this time it was different from before. The number of suns in the sky had doubled to 18. How can this be? General Yi stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief. In the end, little Yi is still too young. In the study, Princeps looked at the image and explained, I've never used my intrinsic spirit field on little Yi before, so he doesn't know that it's one of my tricks. Father Wang listened very carefully as he made notes on the computer. Do intrinsic spirit fields have different attributes? Of course. Princeps nodded. As we all know, the intrinsic spirit field is a form of the small world, also known as the internal small world. Once it was completed in the body, it could be instantly used in battle. In addition, all the spirit energy in the intrinsic spirit field was only available to the user of the field. In other words, once you fall into an intrinsic spirit field, the one who is dragged into it must think of a way to break free as soon as possible. Otherwise, once you run out of spirit energy, you'll be at the mercy of others. And the attribute that Brother Situ spoke of, in other words, should be the secret arts of spirit realm. Everyone had their own unique secret technique in their domain. Usually, it's divided according to the 5 elements of the spirit root. As for my domain mystic art, it looks like flames, but in fact, it's a kind of infinite ability. Father Wang collected the information earnestly. Unlimited abilities? Can you explain in more detail? Actually, Brother Situ can think of it as a set of dolls. My intrinsic spirit field has a total of 9 layers. If you want to break free, you have to break all 9 layers at the same time. Just now, little E only broke the innermost layer. Speaking up to this point, the head of state smiled slightly. Little E is still too young. If there are only 9 layers, why do you say it's infinite? That's simple, because the intrinsic spirit field will repair itself. That is to say, if little E doesn't hurry up and break the next 8 layers, once the innermost layer that has just been broken is repaired, it will wrap itself around the outermost layer again. And this is limitless power. For some reason, Father Wang suddenly felt that General Yi was a little miserable. Just as the head of state had said before, because General Yi had never seen his intrinsic spirit field before, he had no idea who his enemy was at the moment. Even for someone as experienced and knowledgeable as General Yi, this was the first time he had seen an intrinsic spirit field with an infinite attribute, and he had no idea what kind of situation he was facing. The second layer of the intrinsic spirit field was hotter than the first, and the cold frost sword was less effective. General E saw that beads of water had already condensed on the cold frost sword, and it was actually starting to melt. A multi-layer intrinsic spirit field? This was General Yi's initial judgment. Although he wasn't completely right, it was already very difficult for him to make the connection in this situation. At that moment in the study, the head of state suddenly looked at Father Wang. "Brother Situ, do you want to see Little Yi's most powerful sword? But it won't be easy to get Little Yi to take it out. We have to infuriate him." "Alright." Father Wang looked like he was watching a good show. "But how do we infuriate him?" After all, at General Yi's realm, it was basically impossible for him to get angry or go berserk, so it would be a little difficult to infuriate him. And this difficulty was second only to Wang Ling's smile. "No one knows Little Yi's situation better than I do. I'll make the arrangements. Brother Situ, look at this." After saying that, the head of state opened his eyes to look at the broadcast, and said softly to General E in the intrinsic spirit field, "Scared." In Father Wang's ears, these were 3 very soft words, but in the intrinsic spirit field, they were infinitely amplified to a deafening effect, and General E couldn't help covering his ears. Furthermore, the head of state's voice had changed, making it impossible for General E to distinguish his true identity. "Your Excellency, who on earth are you?" General E asked as he stood in the air of the second layer of the intrinsic spirit field after coming back to his senses. "The head of state, you don't have the right to know who I am. I'm just reminding you that if you go on like this, you'll undoubtedly die. So, do you want to surrender?" "You want me to surrender?" General E took a deep breath. Because he didn't understand the situation in this intrinsic spirit field at all, General E actually felt that it wasn't a bad idea to feign surrender at this time. All was fair in war. As long as he could get out of here, the next time he was on guard, it wouldn't be so easy for this person to drag him into the intrinsic spirit field again. Just as General E was thinking this, the head of state's voice rang out again. "I want you to shout 3 times here. I'm not Blade Master. As long as you shout, I'll let you out." Father Wang never expected General Yi's expression to change abruptly at these words. He saw General Yi's face tremble slightly as traces of golden red sword chi began to rise from the surface of his body, and even his white hedgehog head was dyed golden red. Chapter 701. Are you finally angry? The head of state smiled as he looked at General E, who seemed to have become a different person. It was rare to see General E in this state. Apart from when he had fought the 7 demon gods back then, he had rarely seen General E in this state. "What's this state?" Father Wang was very curious. "This is Little E's potential development state. Simply put, it's a technique that uses the boundless sword chi to activate the meridians in the body and thus stimulate the body's potential. It's risky to a certain extent," the head of state said. Back then it was Sword Immortal Fan Rui who developed this boundless sword Dao, but Little E was the only one who received it. When he said this, Father Wang had a look of realization on his face. He also knew about Evil Sword God's arrest. If this was the case, then Evil Sword God's murder of his Shifu back then was most likely due to jealousy. The head of state's next words confirmed Father Wang's speculation. Brother Situ should have heard that Fan Rui had 2 disciples. One was Little Yi, and the other was Chen Nanshan, who is now known as Evil Sword God. Back then, in order to choose a successor to Boundless Sword Dao, Fan Rui was very conflicted, and even came to me for advice. "Your Excellency, head of state and Sword Immortal knew each other?" "We were classmates." The head of state nodded. Back then, Chen Nanshan took revenge on Fan Rui for passing Boundless Sword Dao to Little Yi, and meticulously plotted to kill his Shifu. But in fact, Fan Rui was already aware of this long ago. Fan Rui has always been a cautious person and wouldn't fall for it so easily. So Sword Immortal isn't dead? Father Wang remembered that he had once searched up news on Evil Sword God out of curiosity, and in many comments online, there had always been news that Sword Immortal Fan Rui hadn't really died. But in the end, these were just speculations and there was no evidence to prove it. Fan Rui has indeed perished. At that moment, the head of state revealed the truth of what happened back then. But he didn't die because he couldn't defeat Chen Nanshan as the rumors say. In fact, in that battle back then, Fan Rui deliberately let Chen Nanshan have the opportunity to take advantage of. Chen Nanshan naively thought that his sword skills had surpassed Shifu's, but that wasn't the case. Hearing this, Father Wang couldn't help sching. No wonder evil sword god had been so arrogant all these years, looking for people to fight one-on-one with everywhere. It looked like he had misjudged his own strength. No wonder Ling Ling had beaten him up. Father Wang couldn't help sighing. Is Sword Immortal doing this to guide us? Yes, Brother Situ is right. The head of state said non-committally, back then when Fan Rui chose the sole successor of the limitless sword doctrine from the two of them, Qin Nanshan had always harbored hatred in his heart. But Fan Rui always believed that Qin Nanshuan's nature wasn't bad, and he wanted to use his death to guide this disciple onto the right path. But unfortunately, Qin Nanshan still walked on this path in the end. Then does Your Excellency know why Sword Immortal chose General Yi to be the successor of Boundless Sword Dao? What are the specific criteria? I really don't know. Princeps clicked his tongue. He really did not know much about this matter. I went to ask Little Yi privately before, but he said that this matter was related to the secrets of the limitless sword doctrine, so I did not ask any further. But there was one thing that could be confirmed. When Fan Rui chose his successor, the final evaluation index was not sword skill or comprehensive combat strength. Back then Little Yi and Qin Nanshuan's sword skills were almost on par. After listening to the head of state, Father Wang raised his eyebrows and felt that this matter was becoming more and more interesting. If it wasn't based on sword skill or combat strength, what was it based on? Was it a competition to see who was more naughty? At that moment, Blade Master General Yi, who had entered the limitless sword doctrine, looked like his entire aura had changed dramatically. At that moment, General Yi made a hand seal with one hand. Limitless sword chi scamper. Along with the golden red sword chi that burst forth from General Yi's body, the cold frost sword actually emitted a dazzling azure cold light, as if it had been strengthened. The water droplets on the sword had already completely disappeared, and the power of ice and frost was on full display in that moment. Your Excellency's spiritual domain is very strong, but perhaps you don't know how powerful my limitless sword chi is. General Yi stood with his hands behind his back. He let go of the cold frost sword, and it actually started to spin continuously around him to form a 30-foot sword defense that firmly wrapped him up. Boundless sword doctrine strengthened the cold frost sword, and also strengthened the cold frost armor that General Yi was wearing so that he was protected from the hot environment. But this was just the beginning, because General Yi still hadn't taken out his most powerful magic sword. Father Wang stared fixedly at the image projected in the air. Several dozen seconds later, General Yi opened his hand again, and the entrance to the limitless sword vault in the air opened once more. General Yi took out something unexpected from it. It wasn't a complete magic sword but a sword hilt. A sword hilt. Father Wang was blank at this scene. On the side, the head of state was already in emotional mode when he saw this sword hilt. I never thought that after so many years I would still be able to see Little Yi take out this magic sword. I really miss it. What kind of magic sword is this? Father Wang asked. Everyone thinks that Sword Immortal Fan Rui's royal magic swords are sky-cleaving and brilliant martial, but that's not the case. This sword hilt is Fan Rui's greatest treasure, and it was also the symbol of the successor of limitless sword doctrine that he had given to Little Yi back then. Only someone who understands limitless sword doctrine can use this sword. The head of state gazed at the image and smiled slightly. If Little Yi gets serious, my infinite spirit domain really won't be able to trap him. The head of state was well aware of this sword's origin, because it was a world-defying magic weapon. At that moment, General Yi made his move again. His body was protected by the frost sword. He held the sword hilt with both hands and raised the entire sword hilt high above his head. A few seconds later, Father Wang saw countless qi from all over the spirit domain flow toward the sword hilt, merging bit by bit as it tried to condense into the body of the sword. Brother Situ, this is Little Yi's limitless sword doctrine, the head of state smiled. Limitless sword doctrine is a technique constructed from all the qi in the world. With sword qi as its foundation, it absorbs different kinds of qi to condense them. If it's in a place with a lot of people, even the breath we exhale will be absorbed by Little Yi and turned into power. In the end, the power of a drop of water will condense into a powerful force as vast as the sea, which will then become the limitless sword. So this sword is called the limitless sword. Father Wang was entranced. No, the limitless sword is just the name of the sword, the head of state corrected. If you include the sword hilt, this sword should be called the Sword of Invincible Qi. Chapter 702. Everything was going according to the head of state's plan. This was General Yi's most powerful sword strike, and there was no way he could break through this infinite intrinsic spirit field unless he used his most powerful sword technique. From the very beginning, this had been the head of state's goal. This scene was indeed extremely shocking. In today's era of peace, how could one casually see a great battle between true immortals? General Yi's sword strike now was like a giant special effects film, and Father Wang's heart rippled as he watched. Countless streams of qi condensed into a solid force on the sword. In a split second, sword qi whistled through the air, and golden red sword light flourished as it directly tore through the second layer of space. The volcanoes in the scene almost instantly disintegrated into rubble, and then disintegrated into even finer particles until they became powder, which was finally sucked into the space fissure. With just one sword strike, General Yi had revealed his most powerful divine ability. The golden red sword light, which was tens of thousands of zhang wide, sliced forward with unparalleled godly might. The intrinsic spirit field was cut open like a 1,000-layer cake, and each layer of the space wall could be clearly seen. The whole process lasted a full minute. In the end, Father Wang saw that the boundless sword qi on General Yi's sword hilt had already disappeared, and so had General Yi's boundless form. He reappeared at the villa's entrance, sweating profusely as he panted heavily. That sword strike just now had consumed a lot of General Yi's energy. It was his ultimate killing move, and he could only use it once in a short period of time. But even so, it was already shocking enough. Father Wang felt that thanks to the head of state today, he had indeed collected very good battle material. If he could adapt this scene just now into a novel, it would be a great battle scene. But then again, Father Wang was actually a little curious. In terms of visual effect, General Yi's sword strike just now was indeed impeccable as an ultimate killing move. But in terms of power, Father Wang was very curious about which was more ferocious, this sword strike or Wang Ling's slap. After this sword strike, General Yi seemed to collapse from exhaustion, and he panted on the spot for a long while before turning around. The more awkward thing was that General Yi hadn't brought any spirit energy replenishing elixirs with him on this trip. Although the self-recovery ability of a true immortal was very strong, and they only needed to adjust their breathing to replenish the spiritual power that they lost after casting a spell, when their blue bar was suddenly depleted, the recovery period would be a bit long. The key problem was that this was an era of peace and there was no war. General Yi had never dreamed that there would be a day when he would have to unleash his ultimate move. Gazing at the villa in front of him, General Yi couldn't help falling into deep thought. Until now, he still hadn't completely figured out who on earth this mysterious expert was. But looking at the means this mysterious expert had just used, General Yi felt that this matter had to be taken seriously. As long as they were in Huaxiao Nation, cultivators at the Golden Core stage and above had to report to the local Huaxiao Alliance branch, which would then compile the data and send it to headquarters on an annual basis. For cultivators at the Soul Formation stage and above, Huaxiao Alliance had to be even more precise about their identities. Otherwise, they would be unregistered residents and would be restricted wherever they went. Given the strength of this mysterious expert inside, General Yi felt that it was very likely that this person was an illegal immigrant. This matter would probably have to be reported to the head of state and let the head of state handle it. At this thought, General Yi already had a vague idea in his mind. At this time, a voice came into his ears. It was the voice of the mysterious master, as expected of the Sword Saint. That limitless sword qi really opened my eyes. General Yi frowned deeply. You already knew my identity, yet you still dared to be so heavy-handed? Do you really think you can do whatever you want just because you have some strength? I'm very sorry. The mysterious expert smiled. You can do whatever you want if you have strength. The corners of General Yi's mouth twitched. Don't, you're going too far. This tone was too arrogant. He was a Grand Blade Master, one of the 10 founding generals of Huaxiao Nation, a founding elder of the nation, but he had actually suffered a setback in front of an unknown person, which made him feel exceptionally uncomfortable. In the study, after seeing General Yi's expression change, Father Wang also hurriedly said, Your Excellency, should we invite General Yi in? To be honest, Father Wang really felt that General Yi was a little miserable. However, the head of state chuckled playfully. Brother Situ, don't you think little Yi is very interesting? I haven't had enough fun yet. Father Wang, I've always wanted to know the truth about the legacy of Limitless Sword Dao. Aren't you curious about it, Brother Situ? The head of state said, I know that this involves the secret of Limitless Sword Dao, and little Yi didn't want to tell me about it because he was following his Shifu's orders. But the truth is that I've always been puzzled by Fan Rue's death. Does your excellency think that Sword Immortal is still hiding his secret? That's right. Princeps nodded. Even if enlightening the stubborn disciple was one of the reasons why he chose to die, even if enlightening a stubborn disciple was one of the reasons he chose to die. A few minutes later, the head of state once again negotiated with General Yi, who was standing outside the villa door. If I reveal my identity to you without reservation, are you willing to exchange a secret with me? As soon as the head of state said this, Father Wang immediately knew that the head of state was playing tricks again. General Yi snorted. If I wanted to investigate you, the head of state wasn't afraid at all as he chuckled. If you could find me, would you need to go through so much trouble? I can assure you that as long as I want, you might never know who I am for the rest of your life. General Yi was hit where it hurt because this was indeed the case. Until now, he had only heard the voice of the mysterious man in the villa, but hadn't seen him. Even in a fight, he had lost the initiative. Given the current situation, he was at a complete disadvantage. Furthermore, if there was another conflict later, given the current lack of spirit energy in his body, he might very well be beaten to a pulp. Thinking this, General Yi sighed. How can I be sure that what you say is the truth? At the moment, General Yi felt that the most important thing was to know the ins and outs of this mysterious expert. I swear on Heavenly Tao that everything I say is true. If I'm lying in the slightest, I'll never be happy. Hearing this, General Yi was blank. It turned out that this was a ruthless person. General Yi, what secret do you want to know? The head of state said, I want to know why Sword Immortal passed on limitless sword Tao to you back then. Just this. Just this. I was wondering what it was. The head of state raised an eyebrow. So, you're willing to tell me about it? It's just a small matter. General Yi waved his hand. Back then, I was too shy to open my mouth, so I told the outside world that it was a secret. Now, I'm no longer afraid. It's fine if you want to know, I'll tell you. The inheritor of limitless sword Tao has a very important element, and that is, he must be a pure person, General Yi said. The head of state, so. General Yi, so this old man is a virgin. Do you understand? The head of state. Chapter 703. General Yi's answer could be said to be unexpected, but also reasonable. Actually, with this explanation, the head of state immediately realized that a lot of the things that had happened to General Yi before that he couldn't explain could now be explained. No wonder when he had recommended General Yi to participate in the dating show, Harassment If You Are Not Sincere, General Yi had refused to go no matter what. It turned out that this was to perfectly continue Boundless Sword Tao. After confessing his secret, General Yi chuckled and stood at the entrance of the villa with a smug expression on his face. Your Excellency, can you come out now? While you're at it, make your identity clear. This is our agreement. On the other side, the head of state was already standing behind the door. Open the door. General Yi straightened his clothes, then floated over and opened the door. In the end, the person standing in front of him completely dumbfounded him. Anyone, head of state? Okay. It turned out that the person he had just been fighting with was the head of state. General Yi instantly felt like a mouthful of blood was stuck in his chest and he couldn't spit it out. Wait, was he opening the door the wrong way? General Yi closed the door with a bang and then opened it again. Okay, he had confirmed that this person was without a doubt the head of state himself. It was impossible to impersonate him. He was very familiar with the head of state's aura. Leader, why are you here? Almost instantly, General Yi straightened up and didn't even float as he straightened his feet on the ground and scratched the back of his head with an embarrassed expression. Not far away, the driver in the car and the people in the supply truck behind had startled expressions on their faces. From their angle, they couldn't see who exactly was standing on the other side of the door, but there really weren't many people who could make General Yi talk to them with their feet on the ground. The head of state chuckled. It's a long story, we can talk about it inside. General Yi nodded weakly. Very well, Your Excellency, head of state. Also about what happened just now, don't worry, it won't spread outside this villa, the head of state said. Princeps said, secondly, I also have to apologize. This time I took the opportunity to secretly test you, little Yi. I even had some suspicions about you previously. What did Your Excellency suspect me of? Hearing this, General Yi couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. Previously, I introduced so many beautiful old ladies to you, but you didn't like any of them. I've actually been wondering if there's something wrong with your sexual orientation. But from what I've gathered, it seems that you're still following your master's orders. That's why you've compromised." Saying this, the head of state patted General Yi on the shoulder and sighed deeply. "Little Yi, it's been hard on you all these years." For some reason, General Yi's eyes couldn't help tearing up when he heard this. It was Teacher Pan's chemistry class in the afternoon. Because Teacher Pan had asked for leave today, Old Antique was substituting for her. But Old Antique didn't take this opportunity to attend his history class, because he had already calculated the course schedule. He preferred to teach at his own pace and wouldn't take up extra class time. Old Antique would talk about something else when he suddenly had extra time like this. The summer camp and final exams were just around the corner, so he could use this extra time to talk about these two issues. The final exams were over and the rest of the semester was over. It was only then that a lot of people realized that in the blink of an eye, there was only half a semester left in year 1. The tough days of year 2 were coming. Compared with year 1, year 2 was much more tiring. If you wanted to relax in year 3, it was very important to lay a good foundation in year 2. And most importantly, in year 2, you had to be divided into classes again based on your results in the semester exams. Almost every year, there would be students in the elite classes who would be replaced by students in the regular or remedial classes because their grades in year 1 weren't very good. Although it was an extremely rare occurrence, it was absolutely humiliating to be demoted from the elite classes. Old Antique propped one elbow on the dais and said very earnestly, "Actually, our grades are pretty stable and there aren't any particularly bad kids." Although Old Pan said when you entered school that you were the worst batch of students she had ever taught. Everyone, speaking up to this point, Old Antique changed the subject. Of course, the most stable one among us is still student Wang Ling, who narrowly escaped death. A lot of people couldn't help looking at Wang Ling, Old Antique. Student Wang Ling's grades are almost always in the middle of the class. If he's not 7th, he's 8th. There's only one word to describe him: stable. Teacher Pan even gave student Wang Ling a nickname in the office: Wang Jiangwen. Wang Ling. Actually, as long as everyone can perform as steadily as student Wang Ling in the year 2 entrance exam, no one will be transferred away. Old Antique said this with a little teasing tone. "If any of you are transferred away, I'll give you a 50% discount when you come to my snack shop in the future." After Old Antique said this, the students in class roared with laughter as they looked at him. Of course, it was still a little early to talk about this topic. After all, there was still half a semester left. If they hadn't worked hard in the first half of the semester, they could still be happy in year 2 if they worked hard in the remaining half of the semester. After that, Old Antique very quickly changed the topic to a cliché. "Summer homework," Old Antique said slowly. "This year's summer homework for all of you is a little difficult. But I believe that all of you will definitely be able to complete it." Of course, the summer homework Old Antique was talking about wasn't just simple homework. Foundation Establishment High School's summer homework was fundamentally different from that of ordinary high schools. Based on the experience of the seniors who had graduated from number 60 high school in previous years, it was more or less a few people working together to work out a research project on cultivation and do experiments. Thus, when Old Antique said this, everyone basically had an idea in their hearts. It was just that this year's summer homework wasn't as simple as just a research project. Considering how rampant criminals have been recently, all the teachers in our number 60 high school have voted and decided that this year's summer homework will be development of a killer technique. This is a project for each person to research independently, and can't be carried out in a team. Simply put, it's to design a killer move for yourself. When he said this, Old Antique narrowed his eyes mysteriously. Chapter 704. Originally, this project was usually carried out in the second year of high school, but considering various factors, we've decided to bring it forward a little. To a certain extent, it will improve everyone's ability to defend themselves, Old Antique said. Thus, during this summer break, everyone must combine the attributes of their spirit roots and the spells they are good at to design a sure-kill survival technique for themselves. This was an extra exam that all high school students had to complete regarding the training of a sure-kill technique. Furthermore, the overall score would be recorded in the overall score of the college entrance examination, and would account for 5% of the total score. It might seem like a very small percentage, but this 5% often played a very critical role in the Cultivation college entrance examination. How did the saying go? For cultivators, the college entrance examination was like a mighty army crowding a bridge. Sometimes, a little bit of a grade would prevent you from getting into the university you liked. But Wang Ling didn't care whether or not he could get into the university he liked. He just wanted to find a place where he could go to university safely. Because the sure kill technique had something to do with the college entrance examination, Old Antique's expression turned a lot more serious. You can start thinking about the design of your sure kill technique during the summer camp. At your current stage, a sure kill technique doesn't mean that it's a very powerful skill. So in the evaluation of this sure kill technique, we'll start from three aspects: skill, survival and power, based on the overall quality of this self-created sure kill technique. When Old Antique said this, there was instantly a lot of discussion in the class. Creating a sure kill technique was a very profound field of study, and designing a sure kill technique suitable for oneself wasn't an easy task. Currently, it was permissible to use the operating principles of other spells as a reference for a sure kill technique at the senior high level. There were two problems that needed to be taken into consideration. One was the spirit root. The strength of a spell largely depended on the attribute of the spirit root. For example, those with a fire spirit root were born with a natural gift for strength, while those with a water spirit root had a strong self-healing and recovery ability. Those with a wood spirit root had a natural advantage in terms of spell damage, while those with an earth spirit root had a much stronger sense of nature, while those with a metal spirit root had a solid defense. In fact, a lot of people knew this concept. Thus, when choosing a spell, it was important to choose a spell that was most suitable for your spirit root. Of course, the 3,000 great Daos transcended the 5 elements. When Old Antique had brought this up, Wang Ling had started to ponder how on earth he should design this spell in a way that made it appear low-key and unpretentious, which was yet another huge problem for him. Since everyone's spiritual roots are different, before the summer camp officially begins, the school will arrange a unified test for everyone. Everyone can clearly see the proportion of the 5 elements in your spiritual roots. At that moment, Old Antique brought up another point, which was the proportion of the 5 elements in the spirit root. People with single attribute spiritual roots were naturally more popular, because when choosing a spell they could focus on one attribute. The rest were those with dual attributes, 3 attributes and even 4 or 5 attributes. If it was only dual attributes it would be fine, but the most frightening thing was to encounter a mix of 5 attributes, and none of the attributes were particularly prominent. Wang Ling himself had a 5-element spirit root, but it wasn't a mixed one. Wang Ling was born with 5 perfect spirit roots. He could freely adjust the proportion of the 5 elements in his body to achieve the desired result. In Wang Ling's view, this was actually an advantage because there were a lot more spells to choose from. Generally speaking, the element that attracted the least attention was the metal element. This was a type of spirit root that was symbolic of defensive spirit roots. Basically, most of the metal spells focused on defense. While Wang Ling was pondering this, Old Antique raised his hand and handed out a stack of booklets. "What's this?" someone asked. Although it's not as difficult as creating an original spell, it's still not easy to design a sure kill technique based on the working principles of other spells. This booklet contains the design ideas for some of your seniors from the previous batch. Old Antique smiled. The highest grade among the last batch of number 60 high graduates was S, which translates to nearly 200 points. 200 points? Why so many? Little Peanut exclaimed. Because the design of this sure kill technique is more holistic. First of all, it's skill. That senior made full use of the characteristics of his fire spirit root, and combined 3 kinds of fire spells to create a derivative spell called Dead Sea of Dry Fire, from which the skill score is already very high. Second is the survival score and the power score. In terms of survival, when this spell is cast, it can effectively block an enemy's attack and form thick smoke that can resist ordinary eye techniques. As for the final power score, by combining 3 kinds of fire spells, plus the fact that this senior is a cultivator with a fire spirit root, the power score is directly full. Little Peanut did a rough calculation of the points and then scratched his head. "Teacher, that's not right." Even so, it's impossible to get 200 points. Of course, the reason why this senior was able to get such a high score was actually because he had additional points. At that time, this senior's spell design was plagiarized by someone from another school, and in the end, the headmaster approved it and decided to give this senior some additional points as consolation. Old Antique explained. "Someone stole it?" The students in class were shocked. "This society is more complicated than you think." Old Antique's lips curled. The student who plagiarized the design was surnamed Li, and was called Li Yuanjia. You can probably find this out if you look it up online. At that time, according to your senior's design, Student Li switched the order of the 3 spells used in the Dead Sea of Dry Flame spell and designed the spell, Sorrow of Parting Fire. But unfortunately, this Student Li Yuanjie's skills weren't good enough. He didn't understand the basic principles of the spell at all. The spells that we are going to design in the end are spells that are derived from the operating principles of existing spells, but this Student Li Yuanjie just changed the order of 3 of the original spells and copied everything else. In the end, the Sorrow of Leaving Fire that he designed was nondescript and full of loopholes. So, teacher is here to remind all of you. You have to use your own brain and hands to design a derivative sure-kill spell. Don't plagiarize someone else's work and at the same time protect your own work. I heard that this Student Li Yuanjie has now changed his name to a foreign one. After graduation he will continue to use this method to swindle people outside, claiming that he is an original sorcerer. Foreign name? That's right. Old Antique nodded. His name is Li Ghost Judgment Yuanjie. Chapter 705. Nowadays there were too many shameless people to count. Wang Ling was already used to them. For example, Dean Shadow Fool, who had stolen Father Wang's song a few days ago. Wang Ling heard that this guy was already half dead. Father Wang hadn't chosen to directly kill him, but had instead chosen to thoroughly ruin his reputation by boiling him like a frog in warm water. In the magic circle, original and derivative spells, as well as plagiarized and stolen spells, had always been the focus of attention. Take the Cultivation forum run by grenade-throwing senior Immortal as an example. Every day there would be a large number of posts asking for help in identifying similar spells. The most difficult part of an original spell was the theory of operation. Once you had the theory, you had to go through step-by-step experiments to turn the theory into a feasible operating formula. The birth of an original spell could take a cultivator hundreds or even thousands of years of hard work. Of course, there were some exceptionally talented people who could complete their research in decades, but in the end they were in the minority. After the original spell was completed, they could submit an application to the Cultivation Skills Library on Wuxia Alliance's official website for the copyright of the original spell to protect their rights and interests. After this step, the creator of the original cultivation method would be able to obtain subsequent profits through the cultivator's skill stores on the internet, which Buttface had logged on to before, in the form of authorization sharing. As for derivative spells, all derivative spells were modified based on the basic operation theory of one or more spells. This time they needed to complete the sure-kill spell design, which was a derivative spell. In terms of copyright, as long as the derivative spell was completed, the source of the original spell, its operating theory, and its creator were clearly stated, and it wasn't sold commercially, then it wouldn't constitute infringement. However, there were some people in the magic circle who liked to plagiarize and steal, branding themselves as original spell sorcerers and swindling people everywhere. Wang Ling felt that there were more and more spell copyright disputes nowadays, and a large part of the reason had to do with modern cultivators' utilitarianism. Nowadays there were fewer and fewer cultivators who were willing to devote themselves to studying spells, and many cultivators were starting to become impatient. In today's relatively peaceful cultivation era, without the clamor and killing of various clans and schools of thought contending for supremacy, more and more cultivators were obsessed with creating wealth, to the extent that they didn't hesitate to use some rather dirty methods. As for the identification of those who plagiarized original spells, it was also a big problem at the moment, because there were still too few professional magic infringement identification experts, and the relevant system was not perfect. Actually, Wang Ling had noticed this a long time ago, but he hadn't been able to solve this problem very well. But in recent years, the anti-plagiarism trend among cultivators had become more and more prevalent. In reality, all spells were derived from the 3,000 great Daos. In the eyes of some people, the high-grade magic spells that they covet like ducks might only be a small branch of the 3,000 great Daos. But Wang Ling wasn't in the mood to expose this, because even if he did, there might not be anyone who would listen. He could say it, but there was no need. When school ended in the afternoon, a few boys in the class took out their phones and created a discussion group. This group was used to discuss the design of killing moves. On the one hand, they had been living and studying together for half a semester, so they were quite familiar with each other's situations. On the other hand, in some sense, if you weren't a particularly talented person when it came to spell design in high school, it was more scientific and efficient to find someone to discuss it in a group. While Dopey Gua, Super Chin and Little Peanut were creating the group, Dopey Gua turned his gaze to Wang Ling. Wang Ling, What are you spacing out for? Join the group. After thinking for a bit, Wang Ling still took out his phone. He couldn't help it. This was a result of the environment. If he didn't join the group and completed the spell on his own, he would most likely become the center of attention again. But to be honest, although Wang Ling had a lot to choose from, he really hadn't thought of a spell that was suitable for him. At the moment, he just had a general direction, and it would be best to use the most unconventional metal spell as his main line of thought. And so, Wang Ling joined the group. He was quite curious to know what constructive suggestions this group had. Dopigua's train of thought was very clear. Gripping his phone, he looked as if he had foreseen everything. Here's the specific plan. Everyone can add the attribute of their spirit root in front of their nicknames in the group. It doesn't matter if you don't know what your spirit root is. In any case, the school will do a test in a few days. And then? Asked Little Peanut. Dopigua said with a straight face, draw lots. Wang Ling understood. This was how they would draw lots to determine the order in which they would study the spells. Brainstorming would help one person complete the general design of a sure kill technique first, and then help the next person perfect it according to the sequence. It was actually pretty fair. Saying this, Dopigua opened a lottery software, and each time he clicked on it, a random number would be drawn from 1 to 4. The first person to draw lots was Little Peanut, who drew a 4. Dopigua was number 2. Super Chin was number 3, HM. The first person to draw lots was Wang Ling. Wang Ling. Alright, Wang Ling is first. Everyone help Wang Ling think first, said Dopigua. To be honest, Super Chin was a little surprised. He hadn't expected Wang Ling's spirit root to actually be the relatively conservative metal attribute. How did the saying go? Silence is gold. Little Peanut lowered his head and pondered for a while before saying, generally speaking, spells that are more compatible with the metal attribute can use fire as a secondary spell. Student Wang Ling can choose a metal spell as his primary spell, and combine it with a fire spell as a secondary spell to combine the two spells. Dopigua. But it feels like there aren't many choices for the metal attribute as his main spell. The main thing is that we don't know what metal spells Wang Ling has mastered yet. There's no rush. Super Chin had a different opinion. Even if Wang Ling doesn't know them, he can learn them now. We're still at the design stage, and it's still early for the official Grade 2 assessment. There's still a long time to get used to it. That's true. Dopigua nodded. How about this? Let's check it out. My uncle's company has developed software that can match the most compatible spells from the skill library. Wang Ling listened very carefully to their analysis, and when he saw Dopigua open the matching software, he also leaned over. After inputting data on his height, weight, realm, attribute of his spirit root, as well as his daily personality and other aspects, the software automatically recommended the following skills: Grade 2 spell Free Golden Monkey. A metal-type enhancement spell that focuses on strengthening the limbs and turns them into a golden monkey. When used, speed and agility will be greatly increased, making it easy to escape. From Journey to the West, Conquering the Magic Scroll, Grade 2 spell Canopy Metal Shattering Roar. A metal-type sound wave spell that uses the strengthened vocal cords to release a powerful roar that can shatter metal and split rocks. It causes a temporary dizziness, making it easy to escape. From Journey to the West, Conquering the Magic Scroll, Super Chin shook his head when he saw this. That won't do. Wang Ling usually doesn't speak. Wang Ling, Dopigua, don't worry, keep reading. There's also a secondary fire spell. Furthermore, if you combine these 3 spells, it might not necessarily be a sound wave spell. Wang Ling replied with a and continued to read. The third recommended spell, Grade 1 spell Blazing Sky. A fire-type obstacle spell that uses spirit chi as a medium to ignite the air to create a huge amount of smoke, which is used for escaping. From Zhurong's Spirit Scroll, Wang Ling, Little Peanut. Why are they all about escaping? This is the limitation of metal-type spells. Metal-type spells are mostly defensive spells. Dopigua sighed. Super Chin nodded. But I feel that after combining them, the name will sound pretty good. What's it called? Blazing Sky Playing with Pigs and Monkeys. Chapter 706. In the last 2 days, there was one more person in grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa. It was the incarnation of the weapon spirit of the Wuxia umbrella, the girl called Wuji. In theory, weapon spirits didn't need to eat, but what made Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal very happy was that Wuji loved broccoli very much. It was July 27th on Thursday in the 14th week of the semester. Wuji happily ate 2 large bowls of assorted broccoli salad on the table. Her body was covered in bandages and she only tore off the lower half when she ate. Although her face couldn't be seen clearly, just from the lower half of her face, it was obvious that she was a very beautiful girl. Are the other holy beasts really gone? Little Silver cupped his chin and stared at Wuji. Wuji sighed and put down the broccoli fork in her hand. This is the 302nd time you've asked this question in the last 2 days? I can tell you with certainty that since I was created, you're the only living holy beast that I've sensed. Could it be that you missed something? That's impossible. Wuji shook her head quickly like a rattle. You should know that I'm a spatial magic weapon to begin with. Since I was created, I've been shuttling around with that President Bai, and I've never sensed the aura of other holy beasts. But as soon as I came to Songhai City, I smelled Mr. Silver. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. He believed what Wuji said. Although this girl had been a little resistant at the beginning, in the end she couldn't stand the 10 flames of purification that Wang Ling had stored in the soul suppression ring. Wuji had seen his prowess, so she feared this thing from the bottom of her heart. She didn't know what on earth these flames of purification were, but they sounded really powerful. As long as she was touched by them, wouldn't she be reduced to ashes? Thus, as Wuji spoke, her eyes were nervously fixed on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ring. In this case it was even more impossible for her to lie. Of course, it wasn't that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't understand Little Silver's repeated questions these 2 days. Little Silver was very simple-minded, and had always been under the illusion that even if there was another holy beast in the world, holy beasts weren't truly extinct. But now, faced with this cruel reality, Little Silver really couldn't accept it. So he kept asking Wuji the same question. Wuji thought for a bit, then finally said to Little Silver, "Of course, Mr. Silver, don't be too discouraged. There are also places that I can't monitor, such as the Demon Realm or the Outer Realm. If there are any surviving holy beasts that run to the Demon Realm or leave Earth, it's impossible for me to monitor them." This was actually a consolation, but after saying it, Wuji felt that Little Silver was even more pitiful. Then was President Bai really behind the extinction of the holy beasts back then? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Wuji nodded. Yes, he is the mastermind. However, I only know a little about this matter because I was created after that massacre. And the person who had created it was that elder Ji Xing. What a pity, it's all because I'm young and insensible, that's why I succumbed to their tyranny. At this point, Wuji gritted his teeth in anger. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Of course, if I can increase the range of my spatial detection, I might be able to find other places. Moreover, I have a very strong intuition. Speaking up to this point, Wuji had a very mysterious look in his eyes. I think there's definitely a secret in Beast King's remains. If you want me to monitor it again, I can monitor the Demon Realm, Beast King's remains, the outer Milky Way. If I can upgrade it again, I can monitor an entire planet. The corners of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched. Outer Milky Way, is it? This place was boundlessly vast. Even if Wuji's monitoring range could be increased to the size of a planet, there were trillions of planets in the outer Milky Way, and counting them one by one would really kill him. This was a pretty far-fetched idea. In contrast, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that it might be more convenient to search for clues in Devil Valley. One of the most important reasons why the holy beasts had been wiped out back then was the death of Devil King, the king of holy beasts. Devil King was super lethargic and couldn't be moved by anything. For a previous story, see chapter 538, King of Holy Beasts Devil King. At that time, Devil King had been stewed in its sleep and turned into a pot of broth. Of course, this matter hadn't been verified, and there wasn't enough evidence to show that Devil King had really been stewed to death. However, there had been no trace of Devil King in the last few years, and it was hard to tell whether the news was true or false. I have a hunch that there's definitely a secret about Devil King in Devil Valley, Wuji said very seriously. I've had the same dream before about Beast King's remains. Although I didn't see it very clearly, there's definitely something inside. You have to believe in a woman's intuition. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Although Wuji was currently in the form of a young girl, the forms that artifact spirits took were based on their master's wishes, and the forms they took were the most ideal in their first master's heart. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Wuji, theoretically speaking, artifact spirits don't have a gender. Impossible. Wuji touched her lower body to confirm her gender again. I don't have a little XX. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't want to talk nonsense and said, "Then do you have a way to expand the range of surveillance?" "Of course," Wuxia replied. "You should all know that in order to create me, this deranged Baija collected a total of 49 holy beast skins. He only needed one more to complete the collection. As long as I can collect the last one, I'll be able to level up." Saying this, Wuxia turned to look at little Silver on the side, who felt his hair stand on end. "Damn, what do you want to do to me?" "Wuxia, actually I don't need too much. Mr. Silver just needs to cut me a little bit." "Little Silver, no way. My whole body is master's." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Wuxia spread her hands. "Then there's no other way. Of course, it's also possible to find Devil King. The skin of the King of Holy Beasts is a jack of all trades. It's no problem to synthesize it." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his brow, feeling a headache coming on, and then asked, "As long as it's Little Silver's skin?" Wuxia thought for a moment, then nodded. "That's right." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at Little Silver with a smile on his face. "Brother Silver, from today on, you can pick your feet and save the skin." Little Silver. Chapter 707. It was July 28th on Friday in the 14th week of the semester. After school, Wang Ling hurried back to his room. He was preparing something for Wang Ming's birthday. He had actually been thinking about it for a long time, but hadn't figured out what on earth to give Wang Ming. Wang Ming's birthday was on August 1st, Army Day, which also happened to be the day of the summer camp. There would definitely be a lot of trouble with the school's trip to Beast King's remains this time, so Wang Ling decided to first deal with the most important issue of gift-giving before thinking about the rest. In the end, he still had to deal with things one by one. Birthday gift, final exams, summer camp, the mysterious Kuan Belly girl who was currently undergoing treatment at Immortal Toya's place, as well as the identity of the mysterious angler behind the scenes. All of these troublesome matters had to be dealt with one by one. It was best to give a gift in line with the recipient's wishes, which was the most difficult part. Wang Ling knew that Wang Ming was a very prideful person, so he had to be careful with what he gave him and not touch Wang Ming's bottom line. For example, while Wang Ming was exceptionally obsessed with cultivation, Wang Ling actually had a lot of unorthodox ways to help him embark on the path of cultivation. Unfortunately, Wang Ming himself wouldn't accept them at all. Wang Ling remembered very clearly that a few years ago, Wang Ming had confidently patted his chest and said that sooner or later, he would open up a path of his own. Even if he was a natural muggle and just an ordinary person, he would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the most powerful cultivators in the world. Thus, he could basically dispense with cultivation magic artifacts. Wang Ling had initially wanted to use the 3 emotion stones left over from making the 3 view-shattering hammer to make a permanent armor for Wang Ming, but after careful consideration, Wang Ling immediately felt that this plan wasn't very reliable. Because in comparison, Wang Ming would definitely rather use a rechargeable magic treasure that he had developed himself. After the incident with Old Antique and Shuego sect, Wang Ming had modified the heavenly material sword that he had taken back from the master of Immortal Mansion Jianghu. The sword was much lighter and it could be used for up to half a month after being recharged. The most important thing was that it was very fast, and only needed 4 hours to completely recharge. In addition, Wang Ming had also added a device to the hilt to display the percentage of spirit energy. It could be said that the entire heavenly materials sword had already been modified by Wang Ming to resemble modern cultivation science. The most frightening thing was that not only had the heavenly materials sword's effectiveness not decreased, it had instead increased. Originally, the heavenly materials sword had a powerful ability to seal spirits. As long as the heavenly materials sword stabbed someone, even if it was just the tiniest bit of skin, the sealing ability would immediately take effect. During the Shuego sect incident, Wang Ming had once used the heavenly materials sword to subdue a nascent soul cultivator. That nascent soul cultivator hadn't been able to put up the slightest bit of resistance in the face of the heavenly materials sword, which was enough to prove how powerful it was. After all, this was a magic sword that the master of Immortal Mansion had spent nearly 100 years of painstaking effort to forge. At one point, he had even wanted to seize Jinka to extract its sword spirit and inject it into the heavenly materials sword. Unfortunately, the master of Immortal Mansion's scheme didn't succeed. The only flaw in the heavenly materials sword was that it had yet to form a sword spirit. So at this thought, Wang Ling already had an idea. Moreover, compared to giving a magic tool, giving a sword spirit was indeed a good idea. When necessary, the sword spirit could be Wang Ming's bodyguard, and he could also call 120 at any time. If Wang Ming accidentally ate Jia Yin's food one day and couldn't recover, with the sword spirit by his side, he would definitely be able to save his life. However, the formation of a sword spirit wasn't something that could be formed overnight. Furthermore, in a situation where Wang Ming couldn't circulate his spirit energy on his own, it was absolutely impossible to cultivate a sword spirit by relying solely on ordinary spirit energy. But this didn't mean that Wang Ming couldn't have a sword spirit. There were currently a lot of mass-produced branded spirit swords on the market which all had their own sword spirits. Some of these sword spirits were artificially produced, while others were naturally bred through industrial means. As long as they met the lowest industry standards, they could be sold publicly. If a spirit sword was produced by industrial means, its appearance would basically be the same and one could tell at a glance. As for the sword spirits that were born naturally, when they were summoned for the first time, their appearance would automatically change into the appearance that the sword master most desired. In fact, this concept was not much different from the concept of a tool spirit, because a sword spirit itself was also a kind of tool spirit. As for how to help Wang Ming form a sword spirit in the heavenly material sword, he would have to ask the heavenly Tao to make arrangements. This was the third time this month that Wang Ling had summoned the heavenly Tao through the equivalent exchange array. This was more frequent than in previous years. When Wang Ling was young, the heavenly Tao had been eager to make a deal with him. Now, the heavenly Tao was very afraid that Wang Ling would make a deal with it. Of course, if it was Wang Ling's handwritten letter, the heavenly Tao would still be very happy to trade, but what if it was crispy noodle snacks? And the most frightening thing was that no matter what Wang Ling offered in exchange, the heavenly Tao didn't have the power to refuse, because the array itself was an equivalent exchange. As the person who had the right to summon the heavenly Tao, Wang Ling could offer anything at his disposal in exchange. Crispy noodle snacks would work too. Even if what Wang Ling needed was a little special, as long as he had enough crispy noodle snacks, he could trade for it. When Wang Ling summoned the heavenly Tao once again with the refinement array, the 3 inches astonishing man, who was the embodiment of heavenly Tao, was directly alarmed. "Why are you here again?" The golden 3-inch man was silent for a moment, a few drops of cold sweat rolling down his forehead. A few minutes later, the golden 3-inch man accepted reality. The golden 3-inch man, "What do you want?" "Sword spirit." Wang Ling stared at the golden 3-inch man embodiment of heavenly Tao and spoke telepathically. "Sword spirit?" The golden 3-inch man was blank for a moment, then asked, "Where's the sword?" For the heavenly Tao, a sword spirit actually wasn't anything special because it was born naturally. The most important thing was that all weapon spirits were created by heavenly Tao, but they were only a very small part of the vast heavenly Tao system. As long as the golden 3-inch man wanted to, he could even custom make a sword spirit for himself. "Wang Ling, it's not my sword. You'll have to make the arrangements." The golden 3-inch man, Wang Ling asked telepathically, "Can't I?" The golden 3-inch man, "It's not that I can't. If it's not your sword, this deal will be a little expensive." "Expensive?" Wang Ling cupped his chin in contemplation, his voice trembling. How many crispy noodle snacks?" Chapter 708. Cultivating a sword spirit wasn't something that could be done overnight. Although the heavenly Tao believed that it could indeed arrange it, using crispy noodle snacks as a trade was really a little. After all, the heavenly Tao didn't have the right to refuse Wang Ling. Anything Wang Ling had could be exchanged. Furthermore, the heavenly Tao couldn't make any comments. He couldn't say what he wanted or didn't want. This was also one of the hard and fast conditions in an equivalent exchange. But the key point was that this youngster didn't realize that he didn't want crispy noodle snacks. Thus, when Wang Ling took out a box of custom-made baked gluten-flavored crispy noodle snacks, the heavenly Tao incarnation of the golden 3-inch man suddenly felt like crying but had no tears to shed. He was absolutely certain that his first trade with the young Wang Ling back then had been purely because his brain had short-circuited. This was a sin. The golden 3-inch man stared at the box of crispy noodle snacks, took a deep breath, and then directly put the box away. Wang Ling's heart twitched at this scene. He never thought that this birthday present would actually cost him a box of custom-made crispy noodle snacks. A box of 24 packets? Although he had already opened this box, he hadn't eaten a single one yet. Wang Ling stared at the heavenly Tao and sighed. Sure enough, it was said that the heavenly Tao was heartless, and it looked like it wasn't without reason. After accepting the crispy noodle snacks, the golden 3-inch man stared at Wang Ling. The trade is complete. Everything is as you wish. The sword spirit of that sword will be infused into the heavenly material sword on August 1st this year as agreed. But whether or not he can summon the sword spirit will depend on his own luck. Wang Ling nodded his head. The truth was that he had already helped Wang Ming achieve the most difficult step, which was to form a sword spirit. But whether or not he could summon the sword spirit would depend on Wang Ming's own will. The sword spirit's first summon would only appear when the sword master needed it the most. Elsewhere, at the entry point for overseas personnel at Shanghai International Airport, a blond, blue-eyed young man with his hair combed like an adult and dressed in a handsome suit stood on the monitoring platform with his arms outstretched. The customs lady in charge of testing dangerous goods checked his arms and trousers one by one to see if there were any dangerous goods. According to the regulations of the International Cultivator's Space Transportation Law, as long as a cultivator was riding a large-scale flying magical equipment, they were not allowed to carry any spatial storage-type magical equipment with them. Even the pockets of their clothes and pants that had a separate storage space were not allowed. After confirming that there was nothing in the young man's clothes and pants, the customs lady used a black metal detector to probe the young man's body. The detector did not show any abnormalities. Your inspection is really strict. The blond youth smiled in a gentlemanly manner and passed through the virus detection gate under the guidance of the customs lady. This was an intelligent virus quarantine magic treasure which had been developed by Wuxia Nation's Academy of Cultivation and Magic Treasures. It could detect whether overseas cultivators were carrying foreign viruses. The young man walked past the gate, and the gate lit up with a green light. At this time, the customs officer stamped the passport and returned it to the young man with a smile. Mr. Handi, I wish you a pleasant journey. Thank you. The blond youth put away his passport and put on a pair of sunglasses. Handi. This was the alias second president of Night Chief, President Dillon, was using in Wuxia Nation. After passing the customs security check, President Dillon's tense heart was instantly relieved. Because of that useless good-for-nothing Baija and the fact that Beast King's remains was about to open, Wuxia Nation's customs checks were now very strict. If it hadn't been for someone else in Wuxia Nation helping him arrange another identity as Handi, he might not even have been able to get a visa to Wuxia Nation. And this Handi's identity wasn't fictitious but real. When Night Ghost Spirit Emperor had asked President Dillon to take over the master plan a few days ago, President Dillon had already arranged for someone to prepare a new identity for him. This Handi's real identity was the chairman of a vaccine company. He was an American-Chinese American who wielded great power and ran more than 20 vaccine testing companies at the same time. But unfortunately, a while ago, a vaccine produced by one of this Handi's subsidiary companies had run into a major problem. Just like that, President Dillon had used this as leverage to take over this Handi's identity. There hadn't been any problems with that batch of vaccines at first, but President Dillon had sent someone to tamper with the processing process. Vaccines were very important drugs, and if there were any problems with their safety or quality, this Mr. Handi wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Once Wuxia Nation's Food and Drug Administration investigated this matter, compensation of several billion wouldn't be considered a lot. Most importantly, it was very likely that he would be sentenced to play mahjong with the old devil and the others for several hundred years. So this Mr. Handi was afraid, and in the end he voluntarily agreed to President Dillon's escape plan, gave up his identity and fled to Wuxia Nation with the money. But this Mr. Handi didn't know that Night Chief's people were waiting for him in Wuxia Nation. For Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, only a dead man would leave no evidence against him. As President Dillon strolled out of the airport, a black armed SUV stopped punctually at exit A3. President Dillon approached the car door, which opened on its own. After he got into the car, an overseas call directly rang President Dillon's cell phone. The caller ID on the number was an asterisk. President Dillon immediately picked up the call. Lord Spirit Emperor, I've arrived. Everything went according to plan. And as Lord Spirit Emperor expected, Wuxia Nation's checks were extremely strict this time, President Dillon said. Since it went smoothly, that person can rest assured. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor said, is there enough manpower in Wuxia Nation? Rest assured, Lord, I've contacted quite a few wandering cultivators through the underground dark network this time. They're all very strong, one of them isn't Ghost Head Blade. Speaking up to this point, President Dillon narrowed his eyes. The underground dark network he was talking about was a mysterious network set up by dark forces both at home and abroad. As long as you had the means to sneak in, you could post a notice on the dark network and hire some wandering dark cultivators. This was the fastest way to gather manpower given the current shortage of Wuxia people. These wandering dark cultivators could be hired at a high price, but compared with the big plan, this money was nothing. Gem? What's the background of this ghost head blade? Night Ghost Spirit Emperor's interest was piqued. This person is Numinous Mother's third disciple. I've already sent someone to verify this point. Although this person isn't listed on the killer list, he's proficient in the art of stealth and shifting forms, and can come and go like a ghost. I've already sent him to investigate the identity of that teenager's older brother. Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, are you confident? Lord Spirit Emperor, don't worry, I'm different from that good-for-nothing Baija. President Dillon curled his lips. I'll definitely have Ghost Head Blade capture that teenager's older brother alive in 7 days. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.